Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. Today's show was recorded on January the 16th, 2018. I'm your host, Gaming Psychologist, and with me, as always, my precious snow angel.
I'm Caffeine Rage, and I'm not sure how I feel about this.
On today's show, we will of course be discussing the games that we played this week. We're going to be talking about games that we're interested in that are coming in 2018. We're going to be taking a Patreon topic from Cube, the best games that aren't fun. We'll have our weekly community corner. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. Hello, Rage.
But I don't have to go.
Yeah. I usually always edit out the little flubs, but like my brain just went.
It's too cold. It froze up.
It is too cold. It's really cold outside. It's 13 degrees outside here right now. We were both just comparing weather. Well, I didn't send you my weather chart. You showed me yours, but I didn't show you mine this time.
Oh, don't worry. I know that you're saving it because of shrinkage right now.
Yeah, it is pretty small right now. Short and shriveled. But, yeah, it's really fucking cold outside. And it's been snowing here all day. That's the first and only snowfall we've gotten so far this winter. And it probably will be, because the weather's supposed to kind of roller coaster for a few days and then go back to being in like the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, maybe I should go south for the winter.
Yeah. Maybe I should go farther south for the winter.
No, 50s and 60s are fine for me.
Yeah, actually, I really like anywhere in the 40 to 60 range is great for me. And then the 30s is kind of like, eh.
Yeah, 30s
once you get below
30s are all right for me. 20s is getting low. Getting in this teens bullshit is way too much for me.
Yeah, for me, as soon as it drops into the 20s,
I guess this
like,
just proves that I'm not Republican. I don't like it going into the teens.
Oh, sick political sex pervert burn. No.
And yes, I realize not all Republicans are perverts. It's just we've had a strong sample going that way lately.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely go that way.
And to be fair, we have a pervert on the show right now that is definitely not a Republican. Right, Jared?
Oh, I'm definitely a sex pervert. And we're going to be talking about some sex pervert things again this week, let me tell you. I have been so looking forward to talking about two of my games this week. Ever since, we wrapped up recording last Tuesday, and I went and I sat down to continue playing Gender Bender. I was like, okay, I can't wait for Tuesday so I can talk about this some more.
Well, at least it's not Elite.
Yep. I will be talking about Elite during the show, but not during the games we played segment. During the stuff we're looking forward to or interested in for 2018.
Do I need the deck of playing cards of utter boredom?
No, it'll just be a minute or two.
Or 20?
Probably not. Some of the other games might take a while to talk about, though. We've got a really big list. Last year when we did this, it was only like 5 or 6 games that we did. And so I messaged Rage earlier.
No, I sent you.
No, that's right. You did message me and you asked me about it. And I was like, I have 5 games. So I was going to go back and look at my list and see if I maybe added one more.
Start adding.
You were like, I've got 20. I was like, oh, okay. And I'll just put some of that stuff on there that I was...
This is the year that a lot of the projects from last year got pushed into. So there's a lot of stuff that was announced last year that when I started looking around, it's like, oh yeah, that's releasing this year. Oh, that's releasing this year. Oh, right, that was pushed to this year. Oh, that was from 2 years ago that that nearly got canceled and people forgot about.
But not you, right? The solitary fan out there holding up the boombox in the air.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the background, Stairway to Heaven started to play, and I'm not joking. I'm not joking. My Pandora's actually started to play Stairway to Heaven.
Oh, nice. Well done, Pandora. Good timing.
Well, we started off with Highway to the Danger Zone.
Highway.
Please don't.
Danger Zone. I got it out of my system.
I'm just going to have to get the mallet.
We're on Skype, but we never do video chat because you don't have a webcam, right?
No.
Well, that saves you from having to watch me dance badly while I sing badly. And of course, this isn't a video podcast, so
It's alright. I'll just imagine a brunette Santa being electrocuted. Maybe with a mild seizure.
I'm not a brunette.
I thought you had brown
How dare
hair.
you, sir. I do have brown hair. I have very dark brown hair. Although some of it, I'm starting to get some gray already. My hair's thinning. Probably in another 10 years, I'm going to be fucking bald. I'll miss my long hair when I'm an old man.
No, you'll just go full Larry Fine and just have the long hair around the sides puffed up. Three Stooges.
Yeah, sorry. Now I'm looking up. I typed in brunette just to get an idea of exactly what hair color brunette is, because like I know brunette as a brown.
Well, I was thinking more of a lighter brown, not a darker brown.
No, my hair's darker, I think. But I typed in brunette and I just get porn. I just wanted a hair color.
Well, to be fair, you can compare it a couple different spots with porn.
I guess so. But it's like, there's like some risque photos up here at the top, and then underneath it, videos of brunette.
This just shows Jared's search history, by the way.
Then underneath the risque pictures are videos of brunette, and it's this girl with her ass hanging out, and she's... It's just straight porn. I went on the internet today, and I found straight pornography.
Which, for Jared's monitor, is actually kind of strange, because usually it's a little gay.
It's pretty safe for work. All right.
So, games we played?
Well, games we played this week, yes. From pornography to games that we played.
Yeah,
Rach, what games did you play this week that were not pornography?
Yeah, if we started with you, that would be a hell of a segue.
It would be. Only 2 of my games feature light pornography.
Yep.
Actually, one of them features pretty heavy pornography.
Yeah, my games was actually pretty light because I spent a lot of time going through game lists because, yeah, turns out Steam Direct makes searching the Steam upcoming games a fucking impossible nightmare. So my first game kept popping up on Google Play, and I'm waiting to see, okay, is this exactly what it looks like? And yes, it is.
It's Carmen Sandiego.
Yes, it's exactly Carmen Sandiego. Old Carmen Sandiego with an update. God.
Install.
It's the Apple II version of Carmen Sandiego called San Diego Inc. I mean, this is pretty much the original Carmen Sandiego updated to modern trivia without the Carmen Sandiego license. That's it. I mean,
I'm installing it right now.
I can't believe you haven't seen this because it wouldn't stop bugging me. Every time I went to the Google Play Store, this was like in the top 5 that was suggesting for me on several different fronts.
I've never seen this before when I go to the Play Store. But my Play Store is always filled with
porn,
whatever minor, and this space sci-fi game.
You know, it may be a fun thing to see what exactly our Play Stores compare to at some point. Not today, though, but this kept popping up, I guess because I do a lot of detective and puzzle games, and this is technically a geography trivia game. And for those who've never played Carmen Sandiego, first of all, I pity you. Second of all, download this app, because this is free. It has ads, of course, because, you know, it is a free app, and that's usually how these things work. They're not too obtrusive. They appear, I believe, just before a case starts, and then a case is about 5 minutes. I mean, it's pretty much just the old Carmen Sandiego game. I mean, there's not a lot to really say if you never played it. You know, you are given a case, you go to a location, search for clues, and you're given trivia, essentially trivia hints like, I saw him, he was talking about going to the Notre Dame Cathedral. And then you look at your travel options. Oh, well, Paris is here. Then you follow the path, and occasionally the hints also give you a hint on what the person looks like or what they enjoyed. You know, novels that they were quoting or artists that they enjoy, that sort of thing. And you do a process elimination to get your warrant. You catch up to the person, capture them, and rinse and repeat. And Jared's just probably playing this now.
No, I'm just sitting here listening to you describe Carmen Sandiego to those who have never played Carmen Sandiego.
I mean, that's pretty much the game. It actually works really well as a mobile game. whatever you think about it, because it's short bursts, about, I would say, 5 or so minutes. Granted, as you go higher ranks, the big thing about Carmen Sandiego, which I'm not sure about this, but I assume that it's probably true because just how well they've replicated the original game, was your time constraint, because you're given a certain time frame to capture the criminal by, otherwise you fail the case. And once you leveled up in the original game quite a bit, it was pretty much, you get 2 misses and you're done. Just because of the amount of time you use, unless you're really good at, figuring out where to go on 1, maybe 2 hints.
You go in the world to find Carmen Sandiego, wherever she is.
Hit it, Rockapella.
No, this is lovely. I look forward to playing this coming week. Especially if the power goes out, which, hey, the power might go out because it snowed today. So, yay for living in a shitty place.
I mean, hell, they even had the original fax machine that style interface that they used in the Apple II version of this game. It's just a lovely recreation.
I think my favorite Carmen Sandiego game is Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah, I remember playing that, but I spent most time with the original. So, seeing this pop up constantly, it's like, fine, I'll try it. This is actually a loving recreation and not just a complete ripoff. I mean, granted, it is a ripoff technically, but still, this is a better ripoff than half the things on the App Store.
This isn't a ripoff; it's an homage.
Yeah, it's also suggested to me the Oregon Trail, which this looks nothing like the original Oregon Trail. So, That's what kind of sold me on Carmen Inc. was just the fact that it looked so much like the original game.
Yeah.
So shall we move along to my only non-mobile game?
Sure. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. So since I spent so much time going through game lists and both for the general topic and our upcoming games, I ended up breaking out another Blackwell game. As something to play for a couple hours to be able to get through. This is the third of the Blackwell series, Blackwell Convergence. For those who missed me doing the previous 2, this is it's technically not a series, a serial game or episodic game, Telltale style, but the individual episodes are short enough that it's very hard not to compare the two, to be perfectly honest. They're only a couple hours each, and each episode or each installment of the series is $5 normally. So it's very hard not to consider them an episodic series, especially when it's a continuous story. So in the first game, you met Rosalina Blackwell, the 3rd generation of the Blackwell family, who's been haunted by this ghost, who is essentially a 1940s gangster / detective.
Okay.
And they go around solving paranormal mysteries. And the first game was about them learning to work together. The second game was actually a flashback to originally Rose's aunt, who had the ghost beforehand, and how she dealt with this woman called the Countess. Well,
okay.
And the Blackwell Convergence, the first 2 stories converge, hence the name. And you encounter the Countess again 20 years after the fact from the second game and deal with some more mysteries. I don't want to go too much into this just because there's a fair amount of story twists and turns. Granted, I will go through the rest of the series because I have all 5 of them. But it's an interesting way to see them tie the first 2 episodes together that I wasn't really expecting, to be perfectly honest. Because when I originally played the second episode, I thought that the second episode would have made a lot better intro to the game series. And I still do. But I see why they set the things up like they did, to make the Countess a lot more fresh in my mind, to be able to see the connections a lot easier. If they had the 2 games swapped, it wouldn't be as obvious, even though it would be be in chronological order.
Okay.
So it's an interesting way to deal with that. The production of the game has improved. My primary complaint about the first two games was pop filter, motherfucker, and they still have some of that, but not nearly as intense. Granted, the ghost Joey doesn't scream nearly as much now, so that may be part of it because he was the biggest offender. Art improved. Overall, puzzle quality has improved. There was a lot of going back and forth to Rosa's apartment to search something on the internet to find an address to go somewhere else. But granted, that is detective work, so I could kind of forgive that, but at the same time, it's also a little bit frustrating.
Okay.
But overall, it's an interesting game series so far. I'm interested to see where they take it in the fourth and the fifth installments. This series is actually completely done, so as far as I understand, there won't be more Blackwell games after the fifth one. But they do have a fairly good staple of their point-and-click games. They did, I believe they did Resonance, which is another supposedly really good point-and-click game that I haven't looked in. Well, I picked it up, but I haven't played it yet. Oh, they were the publisher for it. So they have quite a few point-and-click games under their belt. But so far, the quality is improving on these games. I would strongly suggest if you play these, keep at it after the first two, because the first one is absolutely the worst so far. It has the worst intro to a game series I've really seen. Just that first puzzle was fucking annoying, and it made absolutely no sense. But then again, that's kind of just how point-and-click games really work, is that moon logic, you know?
Moon logic.
You know, I don't want to interrupt her, even though I really need to talk to that person. Here, I'll just get her dog to walk around the parking meter a few times so she gets stuck and starts barking. Because, yeah.
Yeah. Because that's better than just walking up and saying, "Excuse me, can I talk to you for just a moment?"
Yeah. Yeah, granted, it does kind of make sense for the character at the very start because she's very non-confrontational. And it wasn't until after that she met Joey and kind of grew a backbone. And she's a lot more assertive in the third game, so it makes a lot of sense. There was a 6-month time jump, if I recall correctly, from the first game to the third.
There's character growth.
Yeah. Yeah, and granted, Joey at the beginning was also very grumpy, but then again, he was also haunting a hospital bedside for 20 years. So I can understand that.
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah, the way the Blackwell Ghost works, or Blackwell Legacy is what he calls it, which is the title of the first game, is that he could not leave his host, whoever is the current holder of the Blackwell Legacy, essentially. He could only go a certain range, and something happened to her aunt, which caused her to fall into a coma for 20 years, so he was stuck in the intensive care unit of a hospital.
Yeah, that would suck.
With a coma patient. So I can understand why he was grumpy.
Well, at least there'd be TV. Something. It's better than nothing.
Well, this is part of the reason why she has to constantly go back to her apartment, is that he actually blocks radio signals or causes disturbances because he's a ghost. Ooh. So, wireless signals like television, until they got cable, wouldn't work around him.
That's terrible.
Yeah, they actually point that out quite a few times, and actually comes into play a few times in the puzzles for the third game.
Using it to your advantage?
Yeah. Yeah, disturbing wireless internet. I think it takes place around 2010 when these games were releasing, because there's wireless internet, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi routers are common enough that they appear in businesses pretty frequently.
But see, that doesn't make any sense, because it makes sense.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. It's
It's normal logic instead of moon logic.
Yeah, it's just whenever they throw the odd things at you, especially, probably my biggest complaint with the story in the third one was the story kind of petered out after a while, and then all of a sudden, you get this other link to the story that kind of ties 3 individual murders together, just completely out of the blue. Just Deus Ex Machina almost, God just suddenly starts hanging out at this one place that you unlocked about 2 days before. And until that point, there was no reason to go there. You'd go there and, that's it. Like, nothing's here.
Right. They got the right level of narrativium to sprinkle around the place, and suddenly the character showed up.
Pretty much. Or would it be more plutonium?
But
yeah, that's about 2 biggest complaints. Was a lot of backtracking to do less than 30 seconds of typing on the computer to go find another place to go to, and there was a odd link to a third murder that caused the story to restart essentially, or go into the second act. But overall, enjoyed it, so there is that.
Well, that's good.
So
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So how about we go from a detective game to a detective game?
All right. Detective me up.
You just want my private dick.
You know it.
Okay, so this was something else that kept popping up on my Google Play queue, and I decided to try it out. It's called Another Case Solved. This is close, but not quite, to my first pitch of game talking about private detective business sim. This doesn't have the business sim aspect, but it handles individual investigations interestingly, where it's all broken down into a series of mini games and essentially logic puzzles. With the exception of, I'm not really sure if you would call this match 3 because it's not quite bejeweled, but you
okay.
Well, let's go into the story so far, because I'm only in the first chapter so far. You are a starting private detective in a city that has banned sugar. Yes. In other words, the worst possible place for me to live. And you deal with essentially petty cases for now. And, lost cats, that sort of thing, but it all seems to be tying together into the end of the first chapter. And that's the story missions. And then there's individual missions where you just go out and collect clues and do essentially the first minigame over and over again to build up for the story missions. But it's all tied into a series of minigames. The primary minigame, when you're out walking around talking to people and gathering clues, is this sort of match 3 draw collect a thon. You can see on the third screenshot looks like a match 3 game, but it's not quite that. You're drawing and trying to match 5 or as close as possible. And as you meet different witnesses, they have different requirements. For example, you may need to collect 20 of the shoe icons overall to unlock that witness to move on to the next one. And you usually have 2 or 3 appearing at the top of the screen at once. And the idea is to collect as many as possible, but also try to get as many multiples of 5 to unlock a secondary thing that could pop up. For example, collecting 5 magnifying glasses unlocks a fingerprint, which another witness may need. And I'm not describing it quite right because I'm not sure what to call this. It's not match 3, but it's a similar concept, but you're drawing the lines individually. And it's not timed. It is timed, but it's not a timer. You have a turn timer. My big complaint with the game is this mini game, mostly because it's a little finicky to try to draw the connections. You're able to draw in between the individual icons in any of the 8 directions. And it can sometimes not quite go the way you're wanting. Okay. Do you know what to call this type of minigame? Because I'm really not doing it justice. It's an interesting idea, particularly when you tie it into the detective, because as you level up, you gain additional skills and you're able to use additional tools to try to tip the scales in your favor. For example, if you're dealing with essentially just a board that has a lot of nothing, you could wipe it clean and get a new board, or be able to collect non-matched items to try to clear up to get a better match.
Yeah, I don't know what that.
You know what I'm talking, but you're understanding what I'm talking about. It's just
I get what you're saying.
It's just
but
it's tough to really put a genre label to it.
Yeah, I don't know if it has a specific name, like gameplay name or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or if it is a genre. But I know what you're talking about. I've seen this in other games before.
Yeah, I just don't play enough mobiles to really even attempt to give it a name. But okay, you have this, and this also essentially powers the rest of your investigation. So, building up a lot of the different types of clues and stuff pays off later in your investigation for the story missions, because you also get then, let's say you do all your clues, and then it tells you, okay, well, the album that you're looking for, which was one of the last ones I was doing, the guy that bought it lives 3 blocks away from a coffee shop, and then 2 blocks away from the waterfront, and you have to look at the map and figure out where it is. Thankfully, you could toggle between the clues to be able to see, oh, well, that's that block is still lining up, that block is still lining up. And these are also powered by the maps that you get through the first minigame, and also be able to use the footprint icons from the first minigame. You can see how this kind of ties together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then there's 2 other minigames that sometimes pop up, depending on the case. There's a searching, just ransacking a place, looking around, which is based on time and intuition, where you go into each room, and it gives you essentially a hot or cold meter. And you get to a certain point on that meter, and then you know it's in that room somewhere, and you look in the individual items in the room. Once again, there's tools and skills that improve your chances on all of these as you level up and improve your character. And also outfit your office also gives you some benefits and access to more tools. And then there's the lineup one, which is probably my favorite of the group, even though it doesn't show up that often. You're given a bunch of mugshots, essentially, and you're told to ask 3 questions, and you have to essentially play Guess Who. You look at the group and try to figure out, okay, what questions would eliminate the most people out of this? And it's a very interesting way to do a matchup, because it's, for one, it actually uses the game models. So if you ask, for example, okay, does the guy have a big nose? Oh, he does. Well, I could match out or click off this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. And it makes you really sit down and deduce what is going on.
I really like that too. That's a good idea for how to do it.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's my favorite one, but it shows up the least often. But, maybe that's for the best, it makes it a treat. And once again, all these minigames have their own individual tools and skills that pop up. And as you complete your story cases, for lack of a better term, you gain stars, which you unlock the individual skills in the talent tree. For example, the searching minigame, I have a skill that gives me an extra 5 minutes, which essentially gives me an extra room to go into. Or, I know 5 minutes sounds like a lot, but it's also, looking around trying to figure out, okay, where could it be? So it kind of makes sense on that front. Or, there's a skill that, or for the witness one, that if you get a brass knuckles, which is matching 5 of a particular thing, then you could randomly remove an innocent person and maybe make your job a little bit easier. So the skills do play a part, and leveling up does play a part. It's an interesting game, and it's pretty good for a pick up and play or more long duration. It has a timer on it on how many of these small cases you could get at a time. So it's not something that you could sit and play for a huge amount of time. Oh, well, of course you could just pay in, but I'm a cheapskate.
Indeed. Is that where the monetization comes in? Just pay to get more time?
Yeah, the monetization comes
cases?
in on two fronts. There's a timer for the newspapers, which is your small cases that give you money, and also as you solve more cases, you gain notoriety and unlock the story cases. And they're already starting to get a little bit further apart. I have to solve 5 small cases now to get the last of the story cases for the first chapter, or it looks like the last one, which isn't that bad. Each of the newspaper cases is, I would say, less than 5 minutes. It's just the match 5 thing, draw line thing. So that's not too bad. And you get a new newspaper every 10 or 15 minutes, and they stack up to 5. So you could do a quick burst of a few of them, close the game, come back later. The monetization comes in also on a premium currency called candies, which you also could search your office occasionally and get some twice a day, once every 12 hours. Or during your case, they could also pop up. So you do get a trickle income of them, and they're used to unlock the higher end level of the skills, and for some customization, your detective or furniture, which also impacts certain things, because getting certain furnitures give you a free use of a tool for each case, that sort of thing, or unlock other tools. It doesn't seem to be too much, though, so it's not that big a deal. And you also have to choose between which furniture you have, because certain furniture categories you can only have one of. Like, for example, you could have a group of post-it notes, a blackboard, or something else on your desk, and each one gives you a free use of a particular tool for a case, but you could only choose one. And each one of those is the non-premium currency, which you could also do a conversion. Actually, the candies into the non-premium currency, or paid money into the premium currency. So technically you can pay to skip, but honestly, it's not really worth it, because you still have to level up your detective anyway, or at least it seems that way.
Sounds pretty good. I might actually try that one out too.
Yeah, it's not bad so far. Like I said, it's very minigame focused, though, so if you don't like one of the particular minigames, or absolutely hate one of them, then it's definitely a non-starter for you.
Yeah. It sounds like I like them, or at least not hate them. So I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I'd say it really pays off mostly on how well you do on the first minigame, because it pays off to do long chains and build up a lot of the secondary clues. That's what they call them, clues, the different icons, to be able to use different abilities, because certain abilities are, some of them are once per case, and that's it. Some of them are fueled by individual of the clues. For example, swapping different clues around is some of the lockpicks, or some of the key icons. So you have to burn some of those to be able to swap an icon, but if you do that, you may be able to come out ahead, because you could do a longer chain of the keys to be able to get a secondary thing. So it's a trade-off. And learning that trade-off and be able to use your tools effectively pays dividends.
Right. It sounds good.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good mobile game, and that's coming from me.
Yeah, that means something.
Yeah, you can see
it must
screenshots.
Be a pretty good mobile game.
Yeah, you can see screenshots of the map game on the other screenshots here. There's the map, and there's the train.
Choo choo.
Just give it a moment.
I think one of your train drivers came through my town the other day. I was sitting in the living room doing something, and I just for literally for like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm like, what the hell's going on out there? Did you derail?
A bus of nuns sitting on the tracks. But yeah, you can see on the other screenshots the well, at least 2 of the other minigames. It doesn't show you the searching minigame, but you can see the map game with the individual clues, and once again, different skills and different abilities make that easier or harder depending on your choices. And the witness minigame, you can see how that plays out somewhat. You can see, the individual mug shots and yes, that one guy in the corner does have a horse mask on. And yes, you can get that for your detective.
Nice. Definitely want to wear the horse mask.
And as your detective levels up, you also unlock more customization things. Of course, right?
Of course.
But overall,
Gotta
not bad.
Play fashion detective.
Well, Fashion Frame is in-game Warframe, so why not Fashion Detective?
Fashion dick.
Well, you got to make your dick look pretty. It's called manscaping.
Yeah, it is. You know it. Anyways, okay, cool. Is that...
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then we shall move on to my games. I have 4 this week. The first one up is Galactic Crew. Are you familiar with the Firefly game that got canceled? Was it in 2016, I believe?
Not really.
It was initially going to be a mobile game, and then they decided to make it a full-fledged MMO, and the game went through some massive redesigns.
Oh, yeah, make it MMO. That's brilliant.
Spent some time in development hell, and then basically died. And there's been, a thing here, a thing there about it. But I think someone saw that and went, I'm going to try and copy that, except instead of making an MMO, I'll just leave it single player. This game is a roguelite, where you create
I have
this,
I think, review copy.
Yeah, I got it as a review copy from Keymailer a week or 2 ago, I think. But anyways, you create a captain, and initially you don't have anything. Obviously, you have the worst ship, and you don't have any captain skills or anything like that. And you enter the galaxy, and you go from system to system, and you do stuff. And depending on which captain you create, because there's various roles, you can be combat focused, trade focused, or exploration focused. And you get different bonuses or penalties, and also whichever one you choose can drastically change the game. For example, the explorer-focused character doesn't actually get any of the map revealed. You have to explore the entire map, but you use less resources to make hyperspace jumps. The trade-focused character starts with additional money and can do a couple extra things earlier on at space stations. And then the combat-focused character starts with a better starting weapon, but you generate what's known as threat, which means that pirates will come chase you down. But you go from system to system in this top-down pseudo-isometric view, and when you jump into systems, it's sort of that FTL thing where the thing will pop up, and there's an activity in the system or a ship or something, and then you have to decide what to do. There's planets you can land on, stations you can dock at, you can board other ships, and sometimes if you come across like a derelict ship, you can board it and get another little questy thing or resources, but sometimes pirates will jump you, etc. It's super rough, and not only in graphics, I can handle a game that doesn't look great, but this is an early access game that's fairly early in development. It released into early access at the end of September last year, so it's been out for 3.5 months, roughly.
Yeah, that's why I originally didn't do anything with it, was that it looked too rough for me to really be able to give it a fair shake.
It seems like it's got some promise, as long as some of the later game things stack up okay. You have a crew that you manage, which can give you bonuses based on what type of crew member they are. Obviously, it's a roguelite, so when you fail, you get to carry over some stuff into your next character playthrough. And you can... your character, as you level up and the skills that you unlock, they stay with the character, but you have to restart everything else. Restart from scratch on everything else. But you can swap at will swap on restarts between soldier, merchant, and explorer. So you can quickly get some bonuses for like all the low level stuff, and within 3 or 4 playthroughs you could probably get a little bit farther. I'm trying to unlock the next ship that has an additional bay that I can put equipment in. so that I can get a transporter and go down to planets or transport onto certain things that I can't just dock with. Because there's a lot of events you come up to and it's like, you can't do this because you don't have a transporter. And I could put a transporter on, but that I'd have to sacrifice either my shield generator or what's the other thing I'd have to sacrifice?
Life support.
Something else. Yeah, shields or something else. And then if I did that, I would die because the starting ship has got a really, really just shitty laser on it. And if it wasn't for my shields, I would die every time I got into combat. But there's quite a few ships, it looks like, that are already in place that you can get now. There's a fairly wide variety of systems and things that you can use. So it looks like it's got potential as long as it continues to be developed. I want to check out the planet stuff before I just put it down for a while. But I think I'd actually like to come back to this game because, me and sci-fi and all of that jazz. I would say, though, don't buy it. Well, it's that weird, catch-22. I would say don't buy it because it's not in a good state.
But if you don't buy it,
then the devs don't get money. If this ever goes on sale for, $5 and you want, a sci-fi roguelite that you can pretend you're in Firefly in, this would get the job done for a few hours. But otherwise, it's not worth the $20 price. It's just not there yet.
Looks like they're trying to do a co-op multiplayer.
I have no idea how that would work. I guess crewing the ship, each person could man a station or something.
That looks like it. I'm just went to their to the Steam page and looking at the news info, and it looks like they're wanting to do 4-player co-op.
I mean, I guess that would work. This does the whole FTL thing where that if you have a crew member man a station, that station gets a bonus, and then over time the crew levels up at that station. So I could see how that would work, but the crew interface is kind of clunky right now. But it might not be so bad if you're only controlling one character. I don't know. I hope this game gets some more development that makes it a much more viable product. I feel like this is something that should be sort of alpha testing and not up for sale.
Yeah.
But, we live in this world where everything just gets posted to Steam. Yeah.
I try not to be a graphics snob, but damn, this looks rough.
It does look really rough. But, like I said, it really doesn't bother me. It gets the job done. Some of the ship designs do look pretty cool, too. They've only got, 3 featured in the screenshots. But there's some pretty big ships. I mean, you start in, the equivalent of a frigate or maybe a corvette. And obviously you can work your way all the way up to, super freighter or carrier that have 10 customizable internal bulkheads and multiple weapons and drones and stuff like that. So, like I said, it's got promise, but it doesn't have enough right now to keep me held for very long.
Well, it looks like it at least has some sort of community going around it.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing is a lot of early access games, they release in crickets.
Yeah. I haven't delved too deeply into the forums, but
hey, look at it this way. It's all English, I could see.
Yeah.
Which sure as hell beats going to the PUBG forums.
Yeah. So, a game with promise, but right now, it's not much more than just a couple bucks to go play with, is what I would say. I don't know if it was on sale during the Steam sale. Looks like it was for $13 and some change.
It still seems a little much for what it is right now.
Yeah, $5 or less at its current state is what I would say this is worth for a curiosity. A couple hours of... So, next game on my list is Gratuitous Tank Battles. So, I've played Gratuitous Space Battles, and I like that quite a lot.
Yeah, I have a few hours in this. I remember putting it down. I don't think I really cared for it that much.
Yeah, I played it for about 2.5 hours, and in some ways I like it better than Gratuitous Space Battles, in others I don't. So Gratuitous Tank Battles, obviously tanks and mechanized units, as in mechs, and infantry soldiers that you can customize to send out. And instead of it just being sort of a, you start on this side of the map, and they start on this side of the map, and all hell ensues, this is a tower defense, and then reverse tower defense. There's a couple of missions in this campaign that basically serves as a glorified tutorial and way for you to unlock all of the parts for customizing. that you go through, and there's a couple of them that only allow you to do one, either attack or defend. Although I haven't beaten the campaign yet, so if that persists later on. But aside from the first couple of missions, they're all you can do both as the attacker and the defender. And it's exactly what I said on the tin: tower defense and reverse tower defense. So in case you're not aware, reverse tower defense is you control the attackers and send in waves of units. And honestly, the most fun part of the game is also sort of the most frustrating, which is the customizing screen.
Yeah, these games,
the customization menu.
Or this and Gratuitous Space Battles had some amazing customization on the ships, but then it just turned into pretty much a screenshot generator or a screensaver. And this was pretty much the same, was it? There wasn't that much gameplay.
No. Although the design mode in tank battles is a little bit more restrictive than it is in space battles, because in space battles you have basically whole classes of ships that you could customize their looks of, different like warp nacelles, for example, and other things like that, plus colors. And then they had basically an amount of power. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but they have so much types of modules they can support per whole class, and you put whatever you want on.
Yeah, it was usually restricted. Weapons were the big restriction, and they had to be certain. They could only fit in certain places on the ship.
Right. Whereas in gratuitous tank battles, each and every unit, infantry, vehicle, or mech, and then turret, because you can design the turrets as well, have got slots that can only fit one of each thing. So one weapon, one type of armor, one thing that gives it like a bonus, like some sort of gun sight or something like that.
Which makes it very min-maxy and not a lot of variation, if I recall correctly.
Right. Some of the like gigantic units, like the
mechs,
this really heavy mechs and the really heavy tanks, have a couple of additional slots for things, but otherwise that's all of the customization you get outside of the color choices and then different types of just visual stuff. Like there's a couple of different types of turrets you could put on, and a couple of different types of weapons. Although it's usually just like, okay, this weapon represents any type of cannon. This weapon represents any type of missile launcher. This weapon represents any type of machine gun. And that's sort of how they break up. Some of them have a little more variation, but in general, that's what you get. The turrets actually have the most customization, because you can put any base on any turret, and you can make any turret any turret class into any type of turret. So there's a whole bunch of mixing and matching you can do with the visual appearance of your turrets. But as far as the tanks and the mechs go, there's very little variation in their appearance. And then the infantry, you can't really tell a difference at all once you get outside of the customization screen, because they're just tiny little dots unless you zoom all the way in, which is pretty much pointless because then you can't see what's going on. So you're going to lose the tower defense portions. It does have a map creator, so you can make custom maps for yourself to run. You can upload them online for others to compete against you or to compete on for high score. But there's no direct multiplayer, so you and I couldn't play together and I attack and you defend, which sucks because that would be pretty cool, I think. It would just be sort of score attack on custom levels we create. It's not a bad game. I do like tower defense quite a bit, so that's
and
sort
this
of the
doesn't
saving
have
grace for this game.
The amazing that this tower defense has.
Yeah, all of these are just preset.
Yeah, this is fixed path tower defense.
Yeah, so that's sort of the saving grace of this game for me, but I was disappointed by the lack of overall customization. I mean, there are tons of options, and you can do tons of things with the color palette, and, you can have bright pink and purple mechs, as I do, and, bright green and yellow tanks, as I do, but, there's only so many...
Yeah, you do know that there's such a thing as camouflage, right?
Not in this game, there's not. But, there's only a certain amount of other combinations you can make. And yes, it's very, very min-maxy. It's like, well, if I'm going to go with cannons on this one, I guess I might as well go for the level 5 cannon, because that's the highest one I have. There's no benefit to going with the level 4. There's some tiny variations in stats in weapon groups, But generally, it's, cannons do the most damage against armor and are slightly less accurate than lasers, but they do less damage against armor, but are better against shields. It's like, so you do have some variety in that respect, but, if I'm going to make a laser tank, I'm just going to go for the best laser that I have. And as soon as I unlock a better laser, I'm going to redesign the tank and then delete the old one so I don't accidentally deploy it in battle. When you create custom maps, there are certain restrictions you can set. Like all of these parts have sort of
A power score.
Well, no, it's not the power score. The power score just determines how much it costs to place it on the field. So, you have your resources just like in a tower defense game, and you have to decide more cheaper units or less but more powerful ones, that deal. The eras prevent you from doing things like using lasers, for example. So you could go to a World War I or World War II era battle, and that restricts it to just machine guns and cannons and flamethrowers and unguided rockets. Then you can go to like a Cold War era, and then that gives you missiles and things like that. And then you can go to like the future era, and then you can have mechs and lasers and shields and stuff like that. But I could see the appeal in that, but also it's kind of like, well, why would I do that if I just want to have a line of giant pink and purple super mechs with, I don't know, dildo-looking cannons or something? Because there's a cannon that looks like a dildo. I should take a screenshot of it, actually, now that I think of it. But I looked at that and I was like, that's just a dildo on the top of my tank.
I'm okay with this.
I am okay with this. So, I'm enjoying it. I'll probably beat the campaign all the way through as attackers and defenders, and then just be done with it. It just, to me, it doesn't have the same sort of replayability as Gratuitous Space Battles because the customization is a little bit more lacking than it was in Space Battles. But it's not a bad game. It's just not a great game.
So
how much does it cost? It's been out for a few years now. $10. Yeah, maybe. If you really like tower defense, and you also like customizing things, yeah, sure. But it's regularly been on sale for less than $5.
Adds a lot. I would say wait for sale for this.
Yeah. Oh, there is DLC. I don't have the DLC. What is this supposed to add?
Maps, weapons, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Like you do.
That might fix some of the customization issues then, just having more stuff. But if you just get the original, it's lacking in customization, which is a pretty big part of the game. So, it comes down to your personal preference. It's definitely worth $5 or less. It's up to you whether or not you want to spend $10 on it. To me, it's not worth it, but it might be to you. All right, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. Delicious. Now let's carry on to my next game, which is one of the ones that I've been super excited to talk about. It is Lady Killer in a Bind. Lady Killer in a Bind is a visual novel where you play as an LGBT female. I'm not 100% sure if she's bisexual or a lesbian. At least in the scenes that I played through on my first playthrough of the game, she never specifically says what she is. Most people refer to her as a lesbian, but she might also be bisexual because I know that there's a route where you can go where that you have sex with a boy. So
in other words, not choosy.
Yeah, she's very not choosy. Very, very not choosy. So, Lady Killer in a Bind is an excellent visual novel that does quite a few things really well and a couple of things that I've never seen in other visual novels before. I'm going to be as pretty much spoiler free, maybe a couple of things from the very beginning of the game, but otherwise I can talk about this without being spoilery. First of all, on the sort of what this does differently as a visual novel front, the way that it handles conversations is something that I've never seen before. So you are having to interact with people on quite a regular basis, and as you go through conversations with people, you'll get different dialogue options, as you do in a visual novel. But these options will go away as part of the conversation, and you might get different ones depending on what choices you make. So as you're having a conversation with someone and if you keep clicking through and don't pick on one of the dialogue options, eventually it will go gray, which means that it's the last chance you have to say that before it goes away. And the next time you click through, that dialogue option will go away. Because it uses what I would say is like a realistic conversation system. Because in a lot of visual novels or video games in general, you can always go back and say, ask your whatever questions you wanted to, go through the giant wall of questions as we do in Divinity.
Mm-hmm.
But, in real life, conversations don't really look like that or work like that. Eventually, it gets too far away from whatever was said to carry on with that point.
So tell me about television.
What?
I was making a joke.
Oh, okay. But anyways, and the way that these dialogue options are handled, sometimes, it's better to wait, just like in real life, instead of blurting out the first thing that comes to your mind, for the conversation to move on a little. And depending on what type of character you're trying to play, it might be beneficial to skip certain dialogue options or to pursue certain dialogue options, depending on what character you're talking to and also what sort of outcome you're trying to get. Because there is a gameplay mechanic in this that plays into the overall story. There's this, they call it the game, where that you are trying to get points to win this competition. You're on a cruise ship, and you are impersonating your twin brother. So there's this suspicion and points mechanic, and there's a few people on the ship who know that you are impersonating your brother, but most people don't. And so as you go through conversations with these people, there will be dialogue options that will give you suspicion, because you're obviously, they know your brother and you're not acting like your brother, but that could be used to your advantage because you could use that to manipulate people, because your brother is known to be really manipulative. So they're like, well, that's not like you, but maybe you're just manipulating me. So you can get away with it. And if you get too much suspicion, though, they figure it out and you lose. So you've got this risk-reward system going into these conversations. So as the dialogue options pop up and then go away, you're like, well, should I say that? Can I really risk the suspicion right now? Or should I not? So it has a really compelling dialogue system that can come up with some pretty unique results. And there's plenty of stuff I had to skip because my suspicion was too high for that day. So I was like, I can't take any more chances. I have to play it safe and not do the suspicious thing. And there were definitely several character routes that I completely missed because I couldn't open up the dialogue options because I didn't want to take the extra suspicion. There's a total of like 8 characters, I think, that you can go through. You're on the cruise ship for 6 days, and most days you have 3 chances to interact with other characters. Occasionally you only get 2 because of scripted events that happen based on character interactions you've had. But usually you get 3, which will give you enough chances within the 6 days to completely go through 3 character storylines. And then potentially a 4th one based on the nighttime character, because there's 2 characters that you get to spend the night with each night that each have their own routes and positives and negatives to staying with them, and dramatically change the outcome of the story based on which one you go with. So your choices really matter. It's got a really interesting and unique dialogue system that I'm not seeing in another visual novel. It might be borrowing from something else, but I haven't played a ton of visual novels. I've played maybe 24 in total. And most of those are like schlocky games. I've only played a few serious ones. And there is quite a bit of sex in this, but it's not schlocky sex, which it kind of sells itself as being schlocky because the opening, like on the Steam page, it says, an erotic romantic comedy about social manipulation, cross-dressing, and girls tying up other girls, which says, oh, this is going to be a schlocky game. But it handles the sexuality aspect really, really, really well, and is much more like erotica than just a schlocky, booby visual novel. The writing is really on point, especially when it comes to the more erotic side of the game. The dialogue between characters is, it has some good points. It has some poor points. This is a small dev team, I believe. I don't think this is just one person. I think it's a small team. But the writing in general is pretty good. Nowhere near as hit or miss as Gender Bender, but not as good as I'm drawing a blank. The visual novel we did for Game Club.
If My Heart Had Wings.
If My Heart Had Wings. Yeah, thank you. It's not as good as that, but it's not as bad as your typical Sakura or whatever schlocky game. But then when it comes to the dialogue that has to do with Sex in the game, really, really spot on, really good, really on point. Makes a lot of sense in the context of the game. Huge themes in this game revolve around BDSM and other sort of taboo sexual kinks. And it handles them really properly in a really adult manner and tries to really convey proper connection and conversation between participants in these sexual activities and what consent is and things like that. It really good and also really hot. So it's not a schlocky game. I can't think of any schlocky moments at all with any of the character relations. You know, there's some bits that can be a bit silly, but that's when they're trying to be humorous and there's, you know, funny dialogue between characters. It also feels very real too. They've got some characters in there that are not understanding, that are not open people, that are very close-minded, and one character that's like a bigoted asshole. So that's an interesting thing to have to deal with, and they handle that on a really mature level. At one point in time, this no longer exists in the game, and I didn't even go down the route which would have led me to this scene anyways, but at one point in time, this game had a rape scene, which they removed after massive backlash. You can still go get the original script for that, and I'm going to once I go down that character path. But I heard that it was handled very maturely, but that most people weren't ready for that. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, after all, it's just a game.
But
sorry,
otherwise,
sorry, I just couldn't help being a little facetious there because there's that kind of double-edged sword of games need to grow up, but then they handle mature subjects and it becomes just a game. Yeah,
I know. But no, this game handles mature content incredibly well. It was very well written, very mature. It does have, without any patches, it has full-blown nudity. There's boobies and vaginas. I don't know if there's any penises, but it has a safe for work mode, which everyone basically just wears sexy, skimpy outfits if you turn that on. But otherwise, yeah, there's plenty of full-blown nudity in this game, which is interesting because it came out more recently than a lot of the games that have triggered the Steam's anti-nudity.
Well, maybe this
whatever.
wasn't big enough.
Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah,
this is a couple years old now, or a year and a half old now.
Yeah. But that's really about all I can get into without starting to spoil the main overall story. Characters do feel pretty real, I will say, as a therapist. They're not... I don't think there's any characters that are stereotypes or caricatures. Some of them seem that way at first, but then once you get to know them a little bit better, then it, you know, they start to become, okay, like I see that. I see why that person behaves this way because of this social stigma or whatever, and they're not actually that. So I did discover that I got one of the most difficult endings on my first try. I'm not sure if that's because I play games a lot, and so I know how to, you know, min-max to win, or if it's because I just sort of figured out what all of the characters were doing and was just really good at manipulating them. But
what does it say about you?
I don't know. But I won the game and got all of the sort of like quote unquote best outcomes on my first try.
And then uninstall.
Well, I'm going to go back through and play it a couple of times because, like I said, there were at least 3 character arcs that I did not touch at all. And then there were 2 that I only got to do a couple of their scenes with. Most characters have 4 to 6 scenes, depending on just the character that they are and what their part in the story is. So, and then there's also the completely different nighttime route. But it's a really good game. I was really impressed and surprised because, like when I told you, I didn't realize how. What was it I said? I didn't realize how erotic this game was going to be, or something like that. But that was because I thought it was a booby game, not that it didn't have sex in it or whatever. So, good game. Much better in terms of like storytelling and things like that than Genderbender was.
Speaking of which,
but Yeah, speaking of which, so I'm just going to go for full spoilers this time. I have to talk about the ending of this game. I played the last 4 stories.
So did your Aeromorph show up?
No. No, but there was a giant naked dragon lady.
Of course there was.
So, one of the main problems that I had with it last time was I kept saying, like, tonal whiplash, how they would just go back and forth between serious and schlocky, and they didn't really do either one justice until they gave up on the serious storytelling and went super schlock. Well, story number 10 tries to do a completely serious story again, and they did do a pretty good job, I will say. The writing for this particular storyline was better than any of the other stories. It was about a character who suffered from gender dysphoria and was already in the process of transitioning from male to female. She was on hormone therapy at that stage, so she'd gone through...
well, that saved a lot of money.
Yeah. She'd gone through counseling and was already on hormone replacement therapy, which takes a couple of years. There's some variances in how people react to it, and also different countries have different medical standards for how to deal with it. But she had just started, so she was looking at 2 to 3 years. And then she's caught up in the accident. The first accident gets turned into a female. And that was one of the thoughts that she has. She was like, well, I guess this saves me a lot of time and money. But she was already wanting to transition. And you go through her story as she's adjusting to life as a female, talks to some friends and family about what it's like to finally feel comfortable in her own skin. It's the only story that has someone who is not open, who is a bigoted asshole against trans people, and so she deals with him in a pretty proper way. There's no schlock at all in this story. A couple of silly bits. She's a college student, and there's like, I don't know, some kind of like silly college game thing where that you have to quote unquote kill other people to get points to win like some contest.
Kyle? Sorry. Sorry. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But it was pretty good. It was honestly pretty good. Like, once they sat down and put their mind to, okay, I'm going to tell a serious story in this world where people can flip genders at will because of amazing scientific advancements. What does that do to someone who has been struggling with wanting to be in another body all this time? Or as a different sex all this time. And when they actually put their minds to it and did a really good story, it turned out really well. And I was quite pleased with that story. And even if you play through it well enough or properly or make all the right choices, quote unquote best ending, you can convince one of the biggest, like, crazy schlocky characters from before to change herself back to normal instead of being like crazy giant anime boob lady. And she says that she's much happier being a normal person instead of being a crazy anime person. So they did good on that one. And then we immediately swing it back around to Super Schlocky in the next story, where you play as just another person.
It's a wombat girl, isn't it?
Who randomly gets their gender flipped. No, there's no wombats. There's a beaver girl later on.
Close enough.
But this is where it starts to go. I thought it had already gone off of the deep end, but no, this is where we actually jump the shark.
Oh, so it's like modern politics. You think it hits the bottom, and then it just starts tunneling.
Yeah, so remember last week I said there were these characters that you run into that I'm like, they're either aliens or they're from the future or something? I was on the right track. They're demon hunters.
From the future.
Because demons are real. And you play a character who gets transformed from male to female, but by a succubus instead of by the gender flipping biology science technology.
Okay, so it's a lesbian succubus because that kind of defeats the purpose of the succubus, doesn't it?
The succubus in this world, succubi will have sex with anyone.
Of course.
Males, females, cat girls, bunny girls, shark girls. And yes, there is a shark girl. They literally jump the shark with a shark girl. But so yeah, demons are real, and you meet a succubus, and she turns you and your friend into her succubi thralls, I guess. But you're sexy demon girls, and you go have sex with people to recharge her sexually based magic powers.
And then Van Helsing shows up.
There's demon hunters that show up, and you turn one of them from a sexy, superpowered demon hunter into like a plain, boring person, and she has to go meet up with some of the other characters to get her powers back with science, gender swapping technology. It's way off the deep end, super schlocky, massive boobies everywhere. And I was like, okay, this is back to the schlock fest that I've sort of fallen in love with, that is this game. And then the next two stories are like set up as a two-parter that cover the same event over 2 or 3 weeks of in-game time, where that there's a portal to hell that is discovered, and this one person gets turned into a girl, because of course they do in this story at this point, and she wants to turn everyone in the whole world into demon girls, and also sometimes animals, because she thinks that everyone would be happier that way, and she wants to take over the world.
Well, depending on how long she lives, she would kind of have the world to herself at a certain point.
Yeah. So she turns the entire island Australian coastal town where that this takes place into busty female animal hybrids. And then the second part of the story is you're just going through trying to stop her. And boy, is it weird.
By your standards, or?
There's a giant bee girl who has got, like, instead of an ass, she has like a bumblebee, what are they, thorax with a stinger for her ass, but it's like sexualized. And there's a giant dragon boob lady, and they constantly refer to it as the boob-pocalypse. I mean, I loved it, but it's just total wacky, weird, schlocky bullshit. Also, there's no alternate endings for these two timelines, so there's really no point to go back and play them other than to just complete the story. And so, yeah, that was Gender Bender DNA Twister Extreme.
What, that's how it ends?
That's how it ends. You stop the demon dragon lady, and you prevent the boob-pocalypse from taking over the rest of the world, but your entire Australian town has been turned into busty lady animal hybrids, and also some people just completely turned into animals for reasons. And then all of the characters from the story get an epilogue. And it's like 1 or 2 pages of text about them and their epilogue. I really want a sequel. I want a sequel that focuses on the 2 science people who transform themselves who come up with this and transform themselves in the first place. They had the most character development throughout the whole thing. They have the most choices and the longest individual stories. I just want another game that focuses entirely on the 2 of them and their adventures as busty anime ladies. I'm in. If they ever make that, I'm buying it. But this game has been complete for a couple of years now, and most people seem to hate it unless you're like me and you love absolutely schlocky things sometimes.
Yeah, whenever somebody asks you your kink, you just say yes.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I'm looking through the screenshots, and that's anime rabbit girl, I think.
Is she the one with the white fur?
This is one with some sort of energy sword.
Energy sword. Okay, where? Which screenshot?
Popular this week. I have Steam Enhanced installed, so I just was scrolling down.
Oh, okay.
So probably about the 3rd or 4th page.
Oh, Jesus, this is gone all wonky.
Yeah, things go a little off the deep end, it seems. Here,
Let's see.
I could just link it to you.
Fox girl, rabbit girl.
That one. It says it's a screenshot, so.
Yeah, that's bunny girl. So what I said last week about cautiously recommending it, I'm now completely altering all of my recommendations. Unless you like really, really weird, slocky shit or have a fetish for animal girls, unless this is like 99 cents and you're just curious, don't spend any money on it. You basically have to be me to like this game.
Well, that's a glowing recommendation.
I mean, I love it, but this, yeah, it just gets trashier and trashier as it goes. Aside from its one shining moment where it took itself seriously and produced a decent story.
I'd say overall the art isn't all that great. It's decent, but... Well, let's just put it this way. I'm seeing several screenshots where people's eyes are going through their hair.
Yeah. They make comments about that too. Like, it points out some of its stuff, and it's like, okay, you're just being lazy and making a joke about your laziness. And only one of those jokes really lands. There's this joke about all the professors at the school looking the same, and there's, like, they make a joke about how they're all, like, a family of 7 identical brothers or something like that. And, like, the way that they play it out in the story...
it's the Pokemon complex.
Yeah, the way it played out in the story, I was like, haha, that's kind of cute. But other than that, no, it's... all of those lazy jokes don't really play out. But yeah, so that's Genderbender, and that's the games that I played this week. I look forward to going back and playing those again later to get more storylines, but I probably won't talk about them anymore.
Woo.
So, looking at the clock, and also looking at my empty water bottle, I need a short break.
Alright, then.
So, let's take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll get into the rest of the topics for the show. Games, and more games this week.
Yeah, we're very game heavy. It's almost like we're designed around the podcast around video games. How about that?
All right, and we're back from a short break, and we are here to talk about games that we're interested in that are coming out in, well, supposed to be coming out in 2000. And
yeah,
like we mentioned at the top, we've got a pretty lengthy list between the two of us, although there's bound to be some crossover.
Yeah, if we don't have... I would say 7 games crossed over, at least.
7 games.
I see. I don't want to go the full 10, but at the same time, 5 seemed like too many, so I'm splitting the difference. Plus, I already know we have 2.
Yeah. I'll go with 6.
All right. I don't see a place on the notes here to drop these, so I'm just going to add one.
Yeah, there wasn't one. A separate numbered list. I've got links for all of mine as well for
I got
show notes.
Links for most of mine. A couple of mine don't have a place really to link to, unfortunately.
Yeah, for mine that I didn't have good places either, just went to the website or like the game's official website or just
Wikipedia,
like YouTube trailers or something like
that. I
don't
even want to do YouTube trailers for one to avoid spoilers. I just put 2018 games.
Ah, there it is. All right, here comes the list.
Yeah, we definitely have some crossover. But yours is also listed by date, and mine isn't.
Yeah.
So I'll add mine as I talk about them. Let's kick off with mine, and I know it's on your list. BattleTech.
Yep.
This was originally supposed to come out late 2016, if I recall correctly. It got pushed back to 2017 and got pushed back again to 2018.
Yeah.
BattleTech, well, it's essentially the granddaddy of mech-based gaming, a tabletop in this case, but MechWarrior borrowed, or stole, depending on your view of things, a lot from BattleTech. And this game is going to be, well, people are calling it XCOM with mechs, which isn't fair, because pretty much anyone, every turn-based tactical game is called XCOM these days, even though it doesn't really use any of the cover mechanics that XCOM uses. But this is a turn-based tactical game. Actually, I would say a fair comparison would be the newer Battlestar game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good comparison.
Where each of the mechs has a turn or a movement allowance, and they're able to move freely across the terrain or jump jet if they're equipped with it. And the further you move, the more points you use, and it also affects how far the mech could turn, because these mechs, who knew a 20-ton mech doesn't turn on a dime?
Well, the 20-ton mechs turn on a dime compared to the 100-ton mechs.
True. But using the movement allowance also limits your turn radius, and it allows you to adjust how your firing arcs go. If you sprint, you can't use your guns. It's a very interesting system, and seeing it applied to mechs, which are big and stompy, it looks very, very interesting.
Yeah, based on what we've seen from like E3 and press conferences and interviews and stuff, it looks like they've I think as faithfully as possible pulled the board or the tabletop mechanics into the game. With the whole movement radius and accuracy and firing arcs and et cetera, et cetera.
It looks like there's a pretty using that system with essentially Battlestar system, even though I'm sure it came from somewhere else. But I think it's the best way to handle this without going full blown hex grid.
Yeah,
which doesn't really work all that well for a mix like this.
Yeah, although to be fair, I would be excited for that just because it's more BattleTech. Because I love all of the old MechWarrior and Mech Commander games. Mm-hmm. I've played the BattleTech board game or tabletop game once. I'd love to actually get into it, but holy fuck, is that shit expensive? And even then, it's one of those things. It's like, well, if you're gonna get into BattleTech, which one are you gonna get into? Because there's different eras that all of them are still fairly active, and then obviously there's been changes in rule sets over the years and stuff like that. So it's extremely complex.
Yeah, to the point where it's probably one of the more complex tabletop games that you can get into, and one of the more expensive ones, short of something like Warhammer.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I don't really have anyone around here to play tabletop anyway, so I never really got a chance to do any of the tabletop stuff.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my chance to go into BattleTech.
We've got some friends that live really close to us that I've been trying for the better part of a year to get together to start doing some tabletop or like Star Wars RPG or something. Because they all like it, but it's one of those things, it's like, well, we're all adults and we all have... Several of us have kids, which is really sad. Little petri dish time sinks.
Well, I'm pretty sure King didn't come from petri dish.
No, he didn't. Oh, but anyways, yeah. So I'm also obviously looking forward to BattleTech, and BattleTech was on my list.
Yeah.
So I put a little tick beside it, so I skip it when I get to it.
So you're up.
Yep, the first one on my list is Railway Empire, which is set to release in like 2 weeks, January the 26th. This is a train/transportation management game, surprising no one that I'm interested in one of these. In the last couple of years after Transport and before that Train Fever sort of revived.
Yeah, this genre has really exploded.
There's been several of these type of games, and Railway Empire looks like a really good one. It looks like it's borrowed a lot of systems from Transport Fever with the way that you build lines, although it looks like it's a lot more complex in terms of commodities and things like that. So that'll be good to see. This feels a bit more like the classic Sid Meier's Railroad games, but with a modern version of that, which I could get into because I love the old those old Sid Meier's games. And they're difficult to get running on modern hardware just because they're from a decade or more ago. So hopefully this turns out to be a good one.
Okay, so my turn?
Yep.
All right, well, let's go from trains to... How about giant walking robots again? Mine are kind of paired off, by the way. With MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. This was also one that was pushed back to 2018, and this is going to be kind of a theme for my list. This is a revival of the old MechWarrior series. And this is being created by the dev team that's behind MechWarrior Online, which the only reason why I don't play that more is that the grind is fucking horrendous in that game. And there's no cheap way to buy into that game. I think it's cheaper to get into BattleTech than it's to MechWarrior.
Yeah, so the story behind that actually is that they were wanting to build MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. They put the engine together and everything, but they needed funding, and they had to approach a studio, and they were like, no, this isn't going to be worth anything. If you can actually prove that this will be worth money, we'll fund you for your MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. And MechWarrior Online has just fucking killed. They're not like a gigantic top 5.
Yeah, but they're very comfortable.
10, but they're the only game in this niche. So if you
there's been several in this niche that's just died off. It's actually surprising.
If If you want big stompy battle mechs that you can actually customize yourself, this is the only game that's left. Is Hawken still around?
No, it went down as well.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is it. Mech Warriors.
I'm pretty sure it did.
Your niche. Even if it's not around, it doesn't have the same customization levels as Mech Warrior. Plus, Hawken is much more arcadey.
Yeah, Hawken shut down. Well, it's shutting down now, actually.
Okay.
It was announced that it was being shut down in October. It would be shut down in January, so... Yeah, it's kind of surprising that only MechWarrior Online has really been able to hold its own, because there was Hawken, there was... I'm blanking on some of the other ones. There was 3 or 4 in a very short time frame. Which maybe that was part of the problem, was that it was such a short time frame. They kind of split up the community, and only MechWarrior Online had enough to keep it going.
Yeah, and plus MechWarrior has
the recognition,
brand recognition. Yeah, so
it's going to be interesting to see what we'll finally get on MechWarrior 5. It's there's been a fair amount of teasers, but nothing really known story wise. Granted, some of the pre-alpha footage I've seen has been a little bit suspect, just because of how the developers have been playing this game. Or is it? It was MechWarrior 5 that I saw the gameplay of, where the developers just wouldn't kill anything and they got just swamped. Or was it a different mech game that I'm thinking? I'm probably thinking of a different mech game now, because there hasn't been a lot of gameplay of MechWarrior 5 out, has there?
No, not really. There's been some.
The
alpha stages.
Yeah, I'm thinking of another mech game, I think, because there's another one coming out, because MechWarrior Online has been such a popular hit. Everybody's trying single-player mech now.
Well, there was also another MechWarrior game that was in development around the time MechWarrior Online came out, and it persisted for a while, but then they shut it down just because market saturation. Yeah. They didn't want 2 MechWarrior games on at the same time.
Yeah, it's such an odd genre to see a pseudo-revival that dying off, and now we're seeing a revival again with both BattleTech and MechWarrior 5 coming out in the same year. Assuming that they stay on target.
It's going to be a good year as long as they come out. I saw there's a lot of speculation on when they're actually going to come out.
Yeah, MechWarrior 5 is question mark on 2018 at most. BattleTech's pretty much guaranteed for this year at some point.
Yeah, most people are saying Q3 for BattleTech. At least most articles that I looked up and were speculating. And then
I've seen some people speculating summer, which is technically Q2.
Yeah. Well, I won't complain if it's earlier. But most people from MechWarrior 5 are like, yeah, maybe at the end of the year, like December. And I mean, most of the games that get put in that category,
I'm expecting to be talking about MechWarrior again next year.
Yeah. Still, though, that's okay. I'll play BattleTech and then MechWarrior. Although I can't use my HOTAS with BattleTech. I guess I'll just have to play MechWarrior Online. So that's another game I can use my HOTAS.
Oh no, with. You'll have to play a tactics game with your mouse. Use your hands. It's like a baby's toy.
All right. Well, is it my turn? The next game on my list is Monster Hunter World, which also comes out January 26th.
Well, you're using the console release for this.
Oh, I thought they were releasing simultaneously.
I haven't heard anything about a simultaneous release, and more about PC being pushed back.
Oh, okay. Well, then I could be completely wrong on that fact. I just thought that they were releasing simultaneously. But regardless, Monster Hunter World,
which is on my list,
will be, at least the console version will be coming out this year, and I won't be playing that one. But still, I mean, it's Monster Hunter as an MMO. Fans of Monster Hunter have wanted something like that for forever. So as long as it doesn't just completely
according to this, fall 2018 for PC.
Okay, well that's not too bad.
Well, supposedly they're spending extra time on it because they've never done a PC release and they want to do it right, which I don't have a problem with.
No, me neither. And hey, the console peasants can beta test it for us. But I mean, I don't really have a ton to say. It's Monster Hunter.
Yeah, I've never gotten to play Monster Hunter. It's always been something I've heard about and I've been interested in. I'm tempted to go back into some emulation and try it there.
I would suggest...
I've seen a lot of people say Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate.
I have not played... That's the one that's on 3DS, right? I have not played that one. I've played the older ones,
I mean, I could probably emulate all of them. So
yeah, I've played the most recent one that I've played is Monster Hunter 3 something or other that released on the Wii U.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was more of the same Monster Hunter I was used to, except you could swim underwater. But I mean, pretty much any of them will work, and just the newer you get, the better the graphics get, because it's basically the same game over and over again with just new monsters and better graphics.
I really hope you fix your list before I put show notes together. Otherwise, this is going to be a huge pain in the ass.
What do you mean, fix my list? What's wrong with my list?
Considering I'd have to click on each one. They're hyperlinked.
Well, I did that because I had... Well, you can't just copy and paste the whole list?
No.
I copy and pasted the whole list.
Not for my personal show notes.
Oh. All right.
But you could do that off air. Next up is one that's actually been circulating today that got my interest. 2 Point Hospital.
Haven't heard of this before.
Think modern theme hospital.
Okay.
With some of the original development team. It's already has its Steam page up and running, and it looks like a modern theme hospital. It looks very promising. I mean, not a lot to say about it, just because it's starting to make the rounds now. But just looking at the screenshots and seeing the humor already present. Yeah, lightheaded, and everybody's walking around with a light bulb head.
Yeah.
And it's being published by Sega. So that's going to be interesting. It's going to have some money behind it.
I really like this art style, too.
Yeah,
very modern, classic.
Yeah, it looks like an updated version of Theme Hospital.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like about it.
Well, I just put it on my wish list.
Yeah, which I actually hadn't before, but there we go. So, you're up.
Sweet. Next on my list, Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, which releases February the 23rd. I found this during the last Steam Discovery Queue that we did. And I mean, it's a Sword Art Online game that's based on the second season, where they actually go to Gun Gale Online. So, very little swords in it, mostly guns.
Well, be sure to pre-order now so you augment your pre-order.
Yeah.
Don't pre-order, kids.
Yeah, don't pre-order, kids. But I mean, it just looks like it's a third-person shooter game, but set in the SAO universe, which I'm all about. And I need to get the first one too, but that one came out last year, so it's not on this list. The one that's a hack and slash RPG, or is it actually an MMO? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I need to get that one too and play it.
Okay, so I'm up again?
Yep.
All right, well, continuing my pairs, how about another hospital management game, Project Hospital? This is essentially the same idea as the previous one, Theme Hospital, only it doesn't seem to be having the humor. It's taking itself a bit more seriously. But it also looks a lot more retro. I would say almost how Xenonauts looks sort of retro, but modern.
Yeah.
It has that sort of feel about it. But it's going to be a more serious hospital management game, which, once again, is an interesting way to take things. And you don't really have that many of these outside of Theme Hospital. So even having a more serious hospital simulator management tycoon game, whatever you want to call it, interests me.
Yeah, this looks all right. I think I would prefer the more humorous version.
Yeah, well, remember, this was being announced quite a while ago. 2 Point Hospital was announced today, but there's still room for both.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The hospital management genre will rise again.
Yep.
All right. Well, next on my list is A Way Out.
Yeah, which was also
I'm a bit nervous. I'm a bit nervous because EA is publishing this game, but they tend to be pretty hands-off with their indie stuff. So fingers crossed that they don't meddle too much in this game. But, I mean, we both were interested in A Way Out when it was announced at E3 last year. And just both the concept of it and the type of game that it is look just really intriguing to me.
What's also really interesting, supposedly, granted, this could change or be Tommy Wiseau being a bit drunk at the Game Awards. But he was talking about how if you have the demo and hooked up with somebody that had the full version, it would turn the demo into the full version to be able to play co-op, which is very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much has to be a must for this, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know.
Yeah, this is
because EA loves money.
This is forced co-op.
Yeah, you have to. Well, could you even play it single player? Have they said if you can play it without a
they
co-op
said it
partner?
was forced co-op.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it would almost by default. I guess you could always do couch co-op with one copy, and then they would say if you want to play online with your friends, buy a second one. But I really hope that they actually do that.
It would be the other way, but that would raise the price.
Yeah, but I really hope they do what you said. If one person has the game and the other person has the demo, they can play it as if it's a full game for both of them.
All right. Well, anything else about Way Out?
Nope. I'm just looking forward to it. Like the art style, like the concept. Hope EA doesn't fuck with it too much.
All right. Well, right now is when I would have been talking about Monster Hunter World, but you've already talked about that. So, how about once again we're working in pairs? Dauntless.
Oh, I saw Dauntless, but I'm a little.
I'm leery about this, but this is interested, not excited about, or will play. But this is essentially free to play Monster Hunter, and I think that there's room for more than one Monster Hunter game, particularly on PC where there hasn't been one. The closed beta is going on now, and I haven't really heard a lot going on with it. And it's all going to come down to how they monetize and how to use Jim's turn of phrase, screw you over for playing free. But I'm going to try it out. I mean, it's going to be a free to play game, so there's no reason not to try it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try it, especially if it comes out earlier in the year, and then wait until Monster Hunter comes. Although, I mean, if it's as good as Monster Hunter, there's no reason to buy Monster Hunter. Although I've heard from people who have had access to the closed alpha that they ran last year sometime, like towards the end of the year, like September, October, with like streamers and stuff like that, that it's not as good as Monster Hunter. It's a lot more clunky and stiff feeling.
Yeah, but it was also an alpha, and it's gone through at least 6 months of development since then. I will say that art-wise, it's very interesting. It's a lot more, not really cel-shaded, but a lot more animated looking.
Yeah. It feels like they captured the art style of Monster Hunter, but then added their own little twist to it. Everything's a little bit slightly more cartoony, definitely shiny than in Monster Hunter.
I'd say it's worth at least a look.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's why I'm interested in it.
Fair play. All right, next on my list is Far Cry 5. More Far Cry. The thing that has interested me the most in Far Cry 5 compared to the last couple of Far Cry games, the two things. One, it's in America, so we get a completely different setting instead of it being, for us at least, far off other side of the world. More fantasy type settings, tropical island and then the Himalayas. Fantasy is maybe the wrong word, but much more exotic and foreign for, us Americans. And I like the idea of having it be in, middle of nowhere in the United States, in Montana, and you're dealing with religious, crazy people instead of, some sort of, civil war or drug cartels or whatever. Just the difference in theme there is enough to draw me back to the Far Cry series. Plus, listening to people talk about some of the closed access they've had at press events and stuff, the game is a lot more silly than the last couple of Far Crys. So it's not taking itself seriously anymore. And I like that sort of thing. I like silliness. And hopefully, again, with this being a big, major tentpole title, I'm hoping that it doesn't get messed with too much. I'm not reserved, to buying this game no matter what. So if they fuck with it too much, I'll just toss it aside and not worry about it. But I'm hopeful or thinking that there's a possibility that this year, after all of the backlash from last year, publishers are going to be in sort of damage control mode for a little bit. And some of these titles are going to be going, no, look, see, we don't have loot boxes anymore because we want you to like us again before we put them back in our games again. And I'm hoping that some of these titles will not have that sort of messing with them. Although with Far Cry 5 being pretty much done at this point, with it just a couple months away, it's got to be just in like the polishing and the bug squashing phase. If those systems were already in place, it'd be pretty hard to redo the game, to retool it, to take them out, I presume. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm intrigued by the new concept and the direction of which they're taking it. So that interests me.
All right. Well, let's start another pair, shall we?
Okay.
And another tick mark on your list. Jurassic Park Evolution.
Yeah.
This looks extremely interesting. This is a park builder with Jurassic Park as the theme. And granted, I imagine the entire point of this game is to avoid a Jurassic Park movie, to be perfectly honest. Because that's always the failure state of these, isn't it?
Yeah.
But having to deal with dinosaurs and the genetics behind it, because this is set in Jurassic World where they're working more with the genetics of the dinosaurs themselves, which technically has been the theme of the entire series anyway, because technically when you want to think about it, they're not dinosaurs. They're dinosaur-shaped monsters, because they are also part frog.
I'm just picturing the whole theater scene from the first Jurassic Park where there's the Mr. DNA's up there explaining everything. I'm just picturing that right now while you talk. There's been one of these before.
Yeah.
It was called Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. It came out in like 99 or 2000.
Yeah, for either the
something
first
like
or the
that.
second game, first or second movie, not game. But
Yeah, it was sort of like based around the second movie, but it's like, okay, we got the park working and no more people are getting eaten, so now you build the park. And it was a fucking blast. I played that game so much on PS2 back in the day, and then a few years ago I got an ISO working of the PC version, which, because it was meant for technology in the early 2000s, it took me forever to get that running. But I got it working, and I played it for, I don't know, another 50 hours at like 600 by 800 aspect ratio.
see, I never played that, but I played Zoo Tycoon with the dinosaur expansion, which is close to what that was, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But this
I'm
looks
so
looks
excited.
very impressive so far. Granted,
Do you know who's making this game?
no, I don't.
Frontier Development, the same people who do Elite Dangerous.
Ah,
They also have a theme park simulator, so I assume that's why they got this.
which
I forget what
theme park one is it? Because there's two major ones.
I forget. I would have to look it up really quickly. So if you want to vamp, I'll look that up for you.
Vamp.
Yes, well done.
I mean, there's not really a lot to talk about here because
It's Planet Coaster.
oh, that's not the one I was hoping for. Because Planet Coaster is weaker on the management side of things, and it's more of a sandbox tool.
Well, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis was that too. It was weaker park management and more just
Yeah,
play
I
with
mean, I could see
dinosaurs.
this going either way. Just play with dinosaurs, but I would love a more strong park management.
Which one were you hoping it was?
I was hoping it was Parkitect, even though it's weaker on the rides itself and not as pretty. It has supposedly a lot stronger park management development. Granted, Parkitect is supposedly coming along.
Well, Frontier also released Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 years ago.
True,
so I don't know if that's...
which isn't a bad game, but it's also it's one of the weaker of the Roller Coaster Tycoon series.
They do Zoo Tycoon as well. I didn't realize that. I'm just scrolling through their game system.
So I may have already played this.
They did Connectimals. Connectimals was shit, but it was fun because you could pet cute tigers.
Okay, so my turn.
Yeah.
Well, here.
Wait, no, you did that. You did that. Even though it's on my list, you did that.
All right.
My turn. Next on my list is the Elite Dangerous Season 3 content expansion, which is called Beyond, and that's releasing in chunks over the course of the year. I'm just really excited because it's new stuff. They're opening up the new storyline with the second alien race, which has been discovered. They're adding a bunch of new ships.
So are these the hemorrhoids, or is it a different problem?
They are the Guardians, my good sir. The Guardians.
Also, there are a bunch of talking raccoons. Got it.
And a tree. One big tree.
Or is it a little tree now?
No, he's growing back into a teenage tree at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. But anyways, yeah, it's releasing in big chunks. They're going for one chunk per quarter for the entire year, with smaller releases in between. The bright side, the good point to this is that if you don't purchase the next season, you'll still get most of the content. You'll get all the improvements that they make. They're really tackling trade data this year, for example. So you'll get all those improvements in the galactic map. You'll get all the new ships available for purchase, stuff like that. So you'll still get benefits even if you don't buy it. But buying it,
how am I going to get benefits?
Content and stuff like that. Well, I mean, you have to buy at least Elite Dangerous.
Oh,
but I'm just excited for that.
So it's kind of funny that you talked about Elite Dangerous here and kind of cheated, because I also cheated. RimWorld. Because its next update is going to be the 1.0 release, and I am very excited to see just what they do with this and any post release content, because RimWorld has grown quite a bit over its early access cycle. It's kind of funny how this lined up, really. I was thinking I was going to have to say, well, there's not a rule to say that I couldn't have already played the game for several hundred hours.
Yeah. That would apply to me at this point now, too. I've racked up over 200 hours in Elite on Steam, not including my pre-Steam playtime. So, yeah. No rules, just right.
I love how this kind of synced up.
Well, you and I, our cycles line up.
Oh, my. Does that mean it's your turn to get sick?
God, I hope not.
But
I was sick first.
Well, it's your turn again then. But RimWorld, for those who haven't heard me talk about it before, it's a colony management game where you're out in the middle of nowhere on this distant planet and trying to survive. It's a colony survival game. Really, really good. It's probably the best of the Dwarf Fortress Lights out there, but it's also very tough, and I usually mod it to make it even more tough in some ways. In other ways, I'd make it easier, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with RimWorld.
Well, I'm very happy for you. I hope it's good. Next on my list is Crackdown 3. This game was supposed to come out last year in, I believe, August, and then it got pushed back to, I think, October, and then it got pushed back to just spring of 2018. The Crackdown series, if you're unaware, you play a super soldier / super cop guy who basically has superpowers. You can jump super high, run super fast, throw cars, and you just go on crazy, wacky crime-fighting adventures throughout the city in this big open world environment. And as you go along, you level up your skills so you can jump higher and farther and throw things farther, and etc., etc. It's just a laugh. It's basically, if you've never played it before, but you have played Saints Row 4.
Well, I was going to use Just Cause.
Yeah, Just Cause is another good analog for it. So those two games are good analogs for what Crackdown 3 is. Unfortunately, this is just a Xbox and Windows Store game. At least at this time.
Just lost my interest.
No Steam release or anything has been announced, but I'm a big fan of the Crackdown series. I played the first two, so as long as it's not, again, laden with unnecessary bullshit microtransactions and garbage like that, and isn't a broken, buggy mess, I'll probably be buying this one.
All right, well, let's see. How about one that's coming out a bit sooner than most of my stuff? A open world RPG, Kingdom Come Deliverance. This is one that's also been making the rounds a bit lately. Think Skyrim, only more realistic, in a historical setting, no magic, and a lot more hardcore. It's a very interesting looking game, and that's why it's on this list and why it's called the interesting game list. I want to see how this plays out. because this is a new studio with a full price AAA priced release, but it looks fucking impressive.
Yeah, this is pretty solid graphics here, which is saying something for indie studios, because a lot of times, because high-end graphics are difficult and expensive, they go for, stylistic or something like that.
And this is a historical, well, it's not, I don't think it's set on Earth, but it's set, Bohemia, located in the heart of Europe, the region is rich in culture, silver, and sprawling castles. So they are dealing with medieval times with a non-linear story, open world. It's an ambitious game, and that's why I want to see where they go with it. And it looks like it's going to require a hell of a computer, so it's going to be a while for me to even play it. But
yeah, there's a couple of screenshots I looked at, like when you were talking, I was looking at them. I was like, is this does this have like FMV or something? Like particularly that first screenshot where that all of the people are in the background. That's some really good looking stuff. I thought that was part of like FMV or something.
Yeah, they've also been talking a lot about how they're handling horses, because Skyrim, let's face it, horses in Skyrim are utter trash.
Yeah, they're terrible.
They're going to handle horses as a more intelligent NPC. So they try to avoid obstacles, and almost like the Assassin's Creed free running, where it plays intelligently with how it moves. So it's going to be interesting to see all the systems come into play and see just how they handle it. And it's releasing next month. I'm just wondering how it does, because like I said, new studio with a very ambitious project.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of this game before. I just put it on my wish list. And as long as it's not a garbage game, I might absolutely put this on my list of games to pick up this year. Because, I love medieval fantasy style stuff. And, I know you said it, no magic and stuff like that.
At least that,
there's not very
at least
many
I haven't seen
games
anyone
do that well.
Talking about a magic system in this. So
yeah, even if it goes for the realism angle, I'm still down for that.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see why you have a PlayStation 4 game on this.
Right. So my next game is Detroit Become Human. So it is currently just announced as a PS4 title. There's been talk back and forth for a while about whether or not it's going to come to PC.
I want to hold my breath in this case, because Heavy Rain didn't come to PC.
No, it didn't, and I'm not expecting it to, but I'm just so looking forward. Like, this game, as long as it tackles all of the issues that they say it's going to tackle, that they've been showing off in a really mature manner, I'm just so interested in the conversation that can come from this game, and I'm just fascinated with it. As long as it is what, or it is at least trying to be what they say it is. And even if I don't get to play it on PC, there's still conversation to be had about the game itself. And this is something that I'm more interested in for its potential artistic and cultural value versus just being able to play it as a game. And if it's a good game, I've wanted to get a PS4 anyways for a few exclusives. And I would be willing to buy a PS4 for this as long as it is at least trying to be the game that it's advertising itself. So that's why it's on there. Cultural value for me.
All right. Well, still keeping up with the pairs. I think this is going to be my last pair, though. Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord.
I wondered if you were going to put this on there, actually.
For those who haven't played the Mountain Blade series at this point, it's a sandbox medieval empire builder. And Mountain Blade 2 seems to be that and more, with some absolutely huge sieges, which you haven't really seen done all that well on really gaming in general, outside of the Mountain Blade series. Usually they either cheat out, or it's the Total War series. Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, I was expecting some sort of response to that.
I've actually never played Mountain Blade.
Mountain Blade, you essentially start as a peasant, and you work your way up, building an army, and eventually either conquering a kingdom or carving your own kingdom out from just the surrounding lands, getting getting villages under your rule, or you could pledge allegiance to the king and deal with his problems. Because there's I want to say 7 or 8 different kingdoms that you could join and deal with, and they have interconnected politics. And it's a very interesting way to handle things because you are taking the role as the commander on the field. So you're trying to develop your tactics in real time as a person on horseback. And oh, by the way, if you take an arrow to the head, you die, and you pretty much lose the battle instantly because your forces break. So try not to do that. It's a very tough game to sell to some people because it is a lot of building up, a lot of essentially grinding, for lack of a better term, even though I wouldn't call it quite that because it's more building up your forces, not just saying they're doing the same thing over and over again. And Mount & Blade 2 seems to be improving the graphics mostly, but also improving its siege mechanics, improving its trade mechanics to the point where I think it's going to be a more mainstream game.
Okay. I mean, I've seen the first Mount & Blade plenty of times on my recommended list, and it's been on and off of my wish list a couple of times, but I might give that a shot this year because I'm sure it'll be discounted. I mean, I assume it goes on regular discount anyways because it's an older game, but they might have some kind of like release date discount or maybe in the summer sale. I'll bump that up the top of my list a little bit and check it out because it sounds like it would be something I'm interested in.
Yeah, it's definitely an older looking game. It's not nearly as pretty as even games of its day. It was considered kind of ugly, but it was also a small development team. But it handled a lot of mechanics very well. And there's only a handful of games I could really think of that has sieges the size of this. And deals with realistic arrow trajectories and that sort of thing. It feels like a medieval sandbox instead of, a video game, for lack of a better term.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
I would say stay away from the last one in the series, Fire and Sword, because they introduced firearms. And well, let's put it this way. They introduced firearms historically accurately.
Oh, nice. I mean, if that's what they're going for, though.
Yeah, true, but
can appreciate that to a certain
but
extent.
it's also put it in historically accurate, which could also be very painful, which it was. I would say
Right.
the best one is probably the Warband, because it also has the multiplayer. There's only a few things that it really lacks, which is a couple of the mods that never got transferred from the original Mount & Blade. But very good game. Anyway, you're up.
Cool. My next game is State of Decay 2. So the original State of Decay is a single-player zombie survival game where that you are trying to build basically a safe haven and eke out a living surviving among the zombie hordes. You have to find a place to get your survivors to, build it up, scavenge for food and materials, eventually set up your own like gardens and things like that so you can become self-sufficient. It had a story where that you learned what happened with the zombie outbreak, and it did have a conclusion, but honestly the most fun part of the game was just go into free mode and just try to survive at different locations for as long as possible. And State of Decay 2 seems to be shaping up to be that, but now also there's a 4-player co-op mode where that you can do that, but with your friends. It also seems to have improvements to graphics and some other new gameplay bits and baubles, but from what I can tell, from what they've released at E3 and, press releases and stuff like that, it's basically just State of Decay with some spit and polish and 4-player co-op, which is exactly what I'd like to have. The original State of Decay came to Steam, although it came later. Right now there's no Steam release announced just currently Xbox One and Windows Store. But the first one did come to Steam about a year after the initial release. So, and Microsoft did own State of Decay at that time. So hopefully State of Decay 2 comes to Steam as well. And kind of makes me want to go play the original State of Decay, which I have. You're up.
Okay, so let's see. Yes. This one is also firmly in the interesting category, which I'm not sure if I'll play it, but I want to see how it plays out. Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves. I went back and forth on Sea of Thieves. Ultimately, I decided not to include it on my list, but
yeah, like I said, it's
close.
It's interesting. It looks like it's straddling the line between streamer bait, just sandbox where really only streamers or those who have a big community would find it interesting, but at the same time, there could be something more there. It's there's a couple of pirate games coming out this year, and this is the wacky zany one where you're shooting yourself out of a cannon, going on for buried treasure and that sort of thing. It's like I said, it's very interesting looking. It's come a long way since its first reveal to its last E3 reveal, but it still seems to be lacking content. But that could just be them not wanting to show all their cards. So, like I said, very interesting, but not sure if I'm going to play it.
Yeah, Sea of Thieves is an interesting looking game that if people in our community were like, wow, let's play this, I'd probably buy it and play it, but I wouldn't buy it myself.
Yeah,
That's
it's
ultimately why I marked it off the list.
Yeah, it's definitely a group play only. I don't think it would be good for single player at all, or even playable single. And that's why it's not, I gotta play this. It's, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, next on my list is Sunless Skies, the sequel, I guess, to Sunless Sea. I'm not 100% sure if it's a direct sequel or if it's just set in the universe.
This was one I considered, but I decided not to because my big concern about it is pretty much the same I had with the first one, is that it's going to get repetitive because it's technically a roguelike. Well, roguelike, but you'd have to play the story several times, and there's only so much that they could do. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we both played the first one 2 years ago, give or take, and we both talked about it. We considered it for Game Club at one point.
A couple times actually, but it's also a bit of a time sink.
Yeah. So I really liked Sunless Sea a lot. And Sunless Sky is basically, from what I can tell, that with airships. So I'm in. That's pretty much what I have to say about Sunless Skies. I mean, I really do like the world and the way that they do their storytelling, and it can definitely become repetitive, and I experienced some of that in Sunless Sea, but I really like the game and its world that it's created and the way that it tells stories.
Yeah, it definitely looks interesting, but like I said, I'm not sure about it just yet. I want to see how it plays out, but that's, a good chunk of my list anyway.
Right.
So, my turn?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm going to drop 2 on here because A Way Out is after this, but, we've already covered that. So, how about... Okay, I'm going to sell this to you right now. First of all, it's by the devs of This War of Mine.
Okay, that's a positive note for it.
It's a city management game.
Okay.
And it's Frozen Steampunk. Frostpunk.
Oh, I've seen Frostpunk. I completely forgot about Frostpunk. It's on my wish list already.
Yeah.
I just forgot about it.
I didn't mark mine because I didn't want to give them away. But this looks very, very interesting. I mean, I already said it's by the devs of This War of Mine, so you know that they're not going to pull any punches. And it's in a frozen world dealing with steampunk technology. I mean, it looks absolutely beautiful. And I imagine it'll be heart-wrenching. I mean, there's not really a lot to say about this. It doesn't have a release date just yet, but I'm looking forward to trying it.
Yeah, me too. Good pick. Good pick. All right. Next on my list, Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, this is one I've considered, but decided that probably not, because it's kind of a known quantity for the most part.
Yeah, and this is the PC release. Obviously, Final Fantasy 15 released in December of 2016 for console.
Yeah, I did hear the PC requirements. Did you hear about them yet?
No.
Yeah, this sucker is fucking huge. A hard drive requirement. Do you want to guess?
100 gigabytes?
Yes.
Sweet. I mean, it's the PC release is supposed to have all uncompressed. I think it's supposed to have uncompressed audio and up to 4K textures in it by default.
Why do you need uncompressed audio?
I don't know. Because they're Japanese, I guess.
Dude, racist.
Yeah. But I originally was going to buy this on console sometime in the previous year. And I was going to wait until after they released at least the first full set of story DLC. That was like the last chapter of the game that they wound up having to cut out for time constraints. And then they were like, oh, by the way, it's going to come to PC. I don't know. Well, I'll just wait then. And it's coming to PC on March 6th, according to the Steam page. And from what I've heard, this is like a sort of Game of the Year edition.
That has all the DLC.
All of the DLC.
But no VR fishing.
That's okay. I don't want to go fishing in VR anyways.
But you can't go fishing with your boy band without it.
That's okay. I don't need to go fishing with my boy band. We can just ride around in our car or on our chocobos, and we can cook food together. It'll be great. Me and my cute boys.
Just don't choke your chocobo.
Oh.
Okay, my turn?
Yep, your turn.
All right, well, this is one I would be surprised if you even heard of. Frozen Synapse 2.
Actually, I'm aware of Frozen Synapse 2.
I was actually surprised with that. Frozen Synapse was a kind of a hidden gem, really, of tactical, asymmetric. Well, actually, it's simultaneous turn-based strategy. And Frozen Synapse 2 is taking the heart of the original Frozen Synapse and putting it in a procedurally generated cityscape with various quests and various storylines that play out. It looks very interesting. I've been following the devlogs on and off for the last several months. And it should release this year, most likely. It's a very interesting looking title. If you're not into this style of strategy game, I mean, it's the same sort of thing that BattleTech handles, where it's a time-based movement system. So there's another game that has the same sort of movement system that we were trying to think of, huh?
Yeah.
And my only real problem with the original Frozen Synapse was that it was all the kill times were hard kill times, so there was no variation, which in a way is a plus and a minus for the game, but it made some certain battles you knew how they were going to play out several turns beforehand, which wasn't that interesting to me. So we'll have to see how they do with Frozen Synapse 2.
Alrighty. Well, let's see. Next on my list was Jurassic World Evolution, but we ticked that one off already. So the next game on my list is, with a question mark, Anthem.
Yeah, I saw the question mark and I was thinking, oh boy. Loot boxes?
So the question, yeah. So Anthem is slated currently for fall of 2018. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this game gets pushed back to 2019 at some point. And I love these
looter shooter.
I love looter shooters. I love that genre, and I love the idea of being basically an Iron Man in a looter shooter. And I've been hesitant just because of EA and loot boxes and microtransaction bullshit. But like I mentioned earlier, there's several people that have the theory and a little bit of hope that EA is going to take this year with a couple of its big titles to go, no, we're not terrible. and pull back on some of that stuff to get everybody sort of lulled into a false sense of security before they go back or introduce it into more games. And I'm hoping that Anthem is at the right spot in development that they can apply that to, and it won't be a festering pile of gambling garbage. But, I mean, if it is, then I'm just going to be sad and ignore it. But I'm hoping, against all hope, that, like, the 1% chance that happen will happen, because I'm not quite as cynical as you are.
Yet.
But
I'll give you 2 years.
I don't expect that to happen. I don't expect them to do anything that would be good for the consumers. I'm just hoping that maybe this theory that some people have had will be right, and Anthem is in the perfect place to be their sort of apology before they try and fuck us over again. So, yeah.
All right.
Your turn.
Well, this wasn't meant to be a pair, but it ended up being that on my list anyway. Well, sorta. Wargroove. And somewhere in a nuclear reactor somewhere, there's a Kerbal going, huh? Wargroove is a sort of a love letter to the old Final Fantasy Tactics. Or not Final Fantasy Tactics, Advance Wars. But still the same sort of idea of turn-based strategy that I had with Frozen Synapse, only this is hard turn-based. Not really a lot more to say about it. It just has the announcement trailer and a press kit out there, so. But it looks, like I said, very interesting. And having more Advanced Wars couldn't be a bad thing, right?
No, definitely not. I love Advance Wars. I miss that game series. So, I'm cool with a medieval homage to Advance Wars. Okay, well, the next 2 on my list were Battletech and Mech Warrior, so obviously skipping past those, to Death Stranding.
Another console?
Right now, yes, they've said that they haven't ruled out the idea of a PC port. And also, it's Kojima, who just does stuff sometimes. And the Metal Gear games, several of them are on PC, so I'm not ruling out a console release maybe in 2019. Although, to be honest, Death Stranding probably is going to slide at least into 2019 anyways.
Well, you gotta wait for that baby one, sure. I've watched the trailers for this, and I have no idea what the fuck.
The throat baby? Yeah.
No. Throat baby that gives thumbs up, remember? That's important.
Right. The thumbs up is incredibly important. I'm just so intrigued by the concept of this game. Like, you know, I've not like bought into the hype, but my curiosity is piqued. I love Norman Reedus. I really like Kojima and the way he tells stories, and I love Guillermo del Toro. So I'm just going, I don't know what this is, but I want to know. And so it's on my list just because of curiosity's sake. And hopefully it gets a PC port within a year after its PS4 release.
Okay, well, that was a thing. So this is one I don't have a link for. This has been making some news rounds in the last couple months. But I think you'll know what it is just based off this. Well, okay. This is another Chucklefish game, same as Wargroove, and also Stardew Valley. Spellbound, the Chucklefish Magic School game. Did you see this? I would say probably September, October. The first hints of it.
I remember some people talking about it somewhere. Probably on a podcast I listened to.
I highly doubt this is going to come out this year, but I'm throwing it on anyway just in case, because Chucklefish tends to hold their games and not really tease them that much without, having a firm release date already in mind. Because they did the same with Stardew Valley. Granted, Stardew Valley was also kind of a weird case because it was in independent development for quite a while. But this, I realize there's no link for this. If you look up Chucklefish Magic School game, you'll get a bunch of articles though. It's a very interesting concept. You don't see a lot of Magic School games either, do you?
No.
And this, a lot of people are saying essentially Harry Potter meets Stardew Valley with a romance in it, and I'm sold.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, there's some more recent articles talking about how they're going to have a more realistic romance system in it, so it's not like Stardew Valleys where you give the right gift over and over again, and that's it, you're done. So it's going to be an interesting one. And
Right.
it's also the few screenshots that they've shown are also very pretty, even for pixel art. I mean, I strongly suggest go checking out some screenshots, and I'll probably link to an article or something for a few screenshots for this. But it's just this is one of the two that I have that don't have any links yet, or any proper links, I should say.
Right. Yeah, believe it or not, Death Stranding didn't have any proper links. I just got the IMDb page for it.
Maybe I should just link to Thumbs Up Baby.
That would work. That would work. Okay, my next game is Ace Combat 7. I was worried that after the the most recent Ace Combat game that the series was dead because they took it from fantasy world to real world and basically set it in the early 21st century where that you were in Iraq and things like that, fighting real world enemies. That just takes a lot of the fun out of it. Because I don't want a gritty, realistic Ace Combat game. I come for ridiculous arcade flight controls and big explosions and anime storytelling. Because all of the Ace Combat games, up until the most recent one, which I think was called Assault Horizon. It's on Steam. Yeah, Ace Combat Assault Horizon. That one just sort of took all the fun out of it. And I was worried that had killed off the series. But it's coming back. Supposedly with a 2018 release, although it's late 2018, so it might get pushed to 2019, which I would be okay with. It's supposed to have a PC, PS4, and Xbox One release, simultaneous release when it comes out, although most of the press stuff you see only talks about the console versions, so I don't know if that means that they've changed that, and PC is coming later, or if it's been dropped altogether. It still says on their website that it's coming to PC, but it doesn't say anything about Steam in particular, so it's made by, or published by Bandai Namco, so they're not specifically tied to one console as far as I'm aware. But regardless, even if it only comes out on consoles, I'll definitely buy it for my Xbox. I love Ace Combat so much. Such a fun, sort of silly flight game. I can still remember all of the older ones for PS2 and the ridiculous anime storytelling that's in them. So much fun. Great games.
All right, well, my turn?
Yep.
Okay, well, here is, another kind of throwback for me. Xenonauts 2. They are, making a second Xenonauts. Well, obviously, I mean, it says it right there. But bringing up into the Cold War. Late 70s, early 80s, I believe. If the devlog, if I remember the devlog. But it's going to be interesting. I've said that quite a few times, but Xenonauts is a game I've bought 3 times so far. I mean, let's just put it that way. I've really enjoyed my time with it that I've played so far. And they're talking about making the changes that to the geoscape mostly to try to improve the tactics, and they're trying to learn lessons from the original Xenonauts, which is a welcome sight to see. Yeah, taking constructive feedback from the first game. And it looks like they're bringing in human psionics as well.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, let's see. We're retaining the time units and other core mechanics from the first game, but we'll attempt to address some of the weaknesses to indestructible UFOs, poor use of vertical terrain, human psionics, etc. I mean, that right there is enough to make me excited.
Yeah, honestly, if they just improved the way vertical terrain worked, I would be very happy with that. I can get past the indestructible UFOs, and psionics is nice as well, but not necessary. But yeah, managing units at different height levels is frustrating as fuck in Xenonauts.
Well, it looks like they're working on that, so.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah, not a lot to say there, but yeah, I don't really have to say anything.
Yep. So next on my list, I hate the name, but I love the concept. #WarGames. It is taking the concept of the old War Games film and bringing it into the modern setting. It's done by the same developers who made Her Story, and it's going to be a full FMV game. And honestly, the only reason I'm giving this game a chance, because the title is so bad, is because of the Her Story developers being the ones who are doing it. I loved Her Story, and that was such a good, interesting, and different game. So if they can apply that sort of thinking to war games, and I have no idea how they're going to do it. The teaser trailer doesn't really reveal anything, at least not that I could figure out after watching it a few times.
Outside of just staring at the camera, it looks like.
Yeah, so... But I mean, if they can apply that same level of out-of-the-box thinking from Her Story to #war games, I would enjoy it despite its stupid name.
All right, well, here's my second one that I don't have a link to. I could provide a link, but I don't even want to have the possibility of ruining Game Club. The Wolf Among Us Season 2.
Yep. I saw that. Almost put it on my list too, and then decided not to.
Yeah, we have a couple that we thought about but didn't, but ended up on the other list, so there you go. I mean, I can't really talk a lot about this, especially because I haven't gotten through Wolf Among Us yet, but the fact that they're continuing the story, that's enough for me.
Yep. I assume it's still Telltale?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to look too much into the trailer just in case it spoiled the Game Club, but it looks like they're keeping a good chunk of the original voice cast as well, which is always nice.
Well, that's good. All right. Well, the next and final game on my list is Into the Breach. This is made by the developers who made FTL.
Yeah, if Steam Direct wasn't a thing, I would have probably seen this. Because trying to find anything on the Steam upcoming releases like I did last year, don't.
Yeah. So this is a turn-based strategy game, which is also a roguelite. I'm not sure how they're going to work those mechanics into it, but they're saying that every time you restart the new game, you'll get a randomly generated map and challenges. So that might be the only thing that there is, and you just unlock new stuff on each playthrough. But they're saying something about how you're going to be able to perfect your strategy by predicting AI moves based on behaviors that they exhibit. So that sounds pretty cool. But I mean, I loved FTL. Pretty much anything that those devs make until they make a real stinker, I'll give it a shot. And I also think it's cute that on the available when it's finished. That's what it says on the Steam store page. Hopefully it's good. There's rumors that it's coming out in 2018, but based on that attitude and the fact that I haven't heard anything about this game until I discovered it when I was making this list, leads me to believe that might not be the case.
Okay, well, I have 2 remaining. It looks like even if I would have said 5, I would have been overshooting things, which isn't a bad thing, to be honest. So, my second to last game is Super Mega Baseball 2. Mostly because there's not many baseball games to begin with, and the first one was actually a pretty good arcade baseball game. They're going away from the super deformed characters. It's still an animated style, but less stylized than the first game. But having a decent baseball game that it's hard to really argue with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care for sports games or baseball.
I do like my sports games, so yeah. And how about one that I think you'll absolutely love that you probably never heard of? Okay. This one actually doesn't have a proper title yet, or unless they're actually calling it Untitled Goose Game, which it accidentally put up there. Where you are, this is a puzzle game where you are an asshole goose fucking with this farmer. Just sit and watch the trailer for a moment.
All right.
I've been hearing about this quite a bit from various smaller gaming podcasts playing it at different gaming events. And you are just a goose who has a list of things to do to be a complete and utter ass to this random farmer.
Drops a sandwich in the lake, okay.
Yeah, and you have things like, spray the farmer with water somehow, and a lot of it is, well, you're a goose and you're trying to manipulate this farmer to doing things to, let you get your goals. That's why I'm kind of calling it a puzzle game.
That's really cute. This looks like it would be a good time waster for.
Yeah, I'm not sure how deep it is, but it looks interesting enough that it would be something fun to play. But yeah, the goose grabs the radio, it turns on, he runs around, the farmer's chasing him, and he gets in the garden that way. And then you're just an utter dick to this farmer.
Oh, there's two geese in the last few seconds of the trailer. Co-op, perhaps?
Perhaps.
Co-op goose shenanigans?
But isn't that fun looking?
That looks really fun and silly. Yeah, I could go for that.
Just being a complete asshole goose. But then again, I'm repeating myself. But yeah, that is my list. Not as much crossover as I was thinking we would get.
How many games do we have? We had the two mech games, Jurassic World.
Yeah, A Way Out. You got it there before I did.
A Way Out. I didn't put a tick mark. That's 4. Yeah, that's it. Oh wait, no, Monster Hunter. 5.
So I would have been right if I said 5, but I thought that was too low.
So did I win? Because this is Price is Right? You said 7, I said 6?
No, because you're still over.
Price is wrong, bitch.
Now get in your fucking hole!
Adam Sandler. It's such a good start to your career, and now you're just a shithole.
What, he became president?
Garbage movies. I'm not sure if that would be an improvement. Maybe
if we had Billy Madison.
Yeah. All right.
Or even Little Nicky.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Alrighty then. Well, if you're doing all right and I'm doing all right, are you ready to move on to Cube's topic that he sent us? The second one?
We're giving him 2 since we had some communication issues.
Right. So the second topic that Cube wanted us to talk about are the best games that aren't fun.
Yeah, I think before we really dive into our game list, we should talk about what we mean by not fun, because there's really a couple ways you could take this.
Right. So
we
talked about this, and I'm drawing
I have my list split up into 2 different categories. The compelling games, games that aren't fun moment to moment, but there's a reason to keep playing them. Either some storyline, they're relaxing, and that sort of thing. And then my other list is called Field Trip. They're designed to make you feel a certain way, and that is not necessarily meant to be fun.
Right. There were 2. Was it 2 or were there 3 obvious ones for that? It was 2, right?
We both instantly thought of 2 Field Trip games. I mean, pretty much instant this topic came up. This War of Mine and Papers, Please.
Yep.
Both very, very bleak games. Games that are meant to teach you a lesson, essentially, in one way or another. And moment to moment, they're not fun, but they could also fit in the compelling category also, just because of how they handle their storytelling. This War of Mine, going from decision to decision and trying to survive in this just war-torn city. Or, go ahead.
This War of Mine, I don't think belongs in the just compelling category.
Yeah, that's why I put it in. That's why I put it in Field Trip, because I felt like it was more fitting there.
Yeah, this War of Mine, moment to moment, just makes you feel like shit. Especially the first few times you play through it, before that effect starts to wear off, as it just becomes, as you become inoculated to it. Just because you're doing so much bad stuff, presented with choices that are bad and worse. And peering into your characters, being depressed and suicidal, and it just, oh man.
Yeah, and Papers, Please isn't exactly, a happy-go-lucky thing either, because you're dealing with, having to deal with this oppressive regime, or constantly changing the rules, and trying to keep your family alive. And just feeling absolutely shit whenever you have to turn off the heat to save money because you didn't stamp enough passports, or even worse, they changed the rules, so you screwed up a couple times and it cost you money.
Yeah, that game constantly makes you feel anxious as well if you really get
Yeah.
into it because of that. And it's like, well, I could take the bribe or I could do the thing that breaks
Yeah,
the
and
rules
yeah,
to get
and
whatever. But if I get caught, then what
yeah,
happens?
and even if you follow the rules and you watch that person go out, and as the next one comes in, you're keeping an eye on that printer. It's like, okay, did I miss something? Did I miss something? Fuck! What did I miss?
Yeah.
And some of them are just brutal.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, maybe Papers, Please could fit a little bit more into the just compelling, but I think I'd argue for it to be in the other
Field
category,
trip?
where it's the field trip category. But yeah, we sat down, each of us came up with a list of games to talk about.
Yeah,
just
and some
briefly.
of them are kind of paired off, some of them aren't for me, just because that's how it worked for me. I have a few that are kind of representative full genres.
Yeah. I just kind of thought of games that made me feel a certain way or another. There were a few that I had missed that you picked up as well.
Yeah.
So. Do you want to alternate, or how long is your list?
Well, mine I could talk about in groups as well. So, let's just talk about a game club game. To the Moon definitely feels it gets in the field trip area as well.
Yeah, To the Moon's gameplay is honestly pretty bad. It's somewhere between non-engaging and bad.
Yeah, that
Depending on which
one combat section was just absolutely horrible and felt like it was just there to pad out the game. But overall, To the Moon is a very kind of depressing story whenever you really break it down.
Yes, it is.
And the fact that people seem to mistag it because I think they go halfway through the story and put it down.
Yeah, I mean it's not a very long experience either, 3-4 hours. So, but yeah, I mean just the way the actual weight of the story and what you're doing combined with that gut wrenching soundtrack. I don't think I've had to talk to a single person who's played this game that hasn't cried.
I don't think I cried, but I definitely did not enjoy my experience.
Yeah. Okay, well, it hasn't felt bad. Hasn't shed a tear. Did you shed even one solitary
I'm
manly
not
tear?
sure about that.
Oh, I bawled my eyes out the first time and the second time.
I think my worst time was actually Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which I would also, kind of put in this category as well.
Yeah, I agree.
It starts off very light, but as it goes on and on, it becomes less and less fun, especially once you hit the city. I would say that's when it becomes a non-fun game, but that once again, that's where you draw the line, because that's what the last third of the game, last quarter.
Right. Yeah, but Brothers is pretty short too, a few hours. I picked out a few games that I'd recently played that I found compelling as opposed to fun. Space Plan, I talked about that on the podcast a few months ago at this point, I believe. That's a clicker game that is kind of silly, got some funny storytelling elements to it. It's not really a lot of fun, but as you go through, there's some interesting story beats that keep you going, and then the ending is just gorgeous.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet. You sent it to me.
The pixel art that it does for you, mixed with the soundtrack that plays basically as the credits, I was pretty wowed by that. So not fun, but compelling to get you to the end, where that it feels sort of like, I mean, it definitely is like a work of art. Like that's what this is. It's a weird sort of museum art gallery that you go to, or like an art exhibit. And as you walk through it, you're sort of drawn farther in. And then when you get to the end, you're like, oh, wow. Okay, this all comes together and is beautiful. And that's what Space Plan is.
Well, if you want to talk compelling, I have Dwarf Fortress, the Sim City, kind of just genre as well, with City Skylines. You could throw RimWorld in there. All of them are compelling in their own way, where it's about how long you last, or how much you can build up. But moment to moment, it's not really fun per se, unless you enjoy, like in City Skylines, setting and building little individual details that honestly you would never really see unless you zoomed way in. But it's that compulsion of wanting to try to design your own city, design a place you may know or a place you may be dreaming of that keeps you going. But it's not necessarily fun on a day-to-day or moment-to-moment basis.
Yeah, and in that same vein, I put Xenonauts and XCOM
which I have
jointly together on
which
the
I have
list.
XCOM on my list as well.
Just, the moment-to-moment gameplay is not fun. It's stressful, but it's challenging. Like, for me, it gets my brain going. I have to think, like, how can I tackle this situation? How can I come out of it on top? And there are fun parts to it, and I definitely feel good when I win, but I don't play it because it's like a fun woo game. It's really challenging, and I get satisfaction from coming out of those really difficult situations. And the end of the game, particularly in XCOM, I haven't actually gotten that far in Xenonauts yet, but the end game in XCOM gets really boring because you get so OP that the challenge starts to fade away. I mean, if you really fuck up, you can still lose, but that constant, like, oh Jesus! And
so it's basically climbing up a wall and then coasting.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the same vein for a couple of mine on the compelling category: Cuphead and Super Meat Boy. Just ball-bustingly tough platformer or platformer shooters that has this build up as you try the level or try the boss and get a little further each time until that big release at the end where, that's the fun part or that fun moment, that endorphin hit. But until that point, it's just incredibly frustrating. And, I would definitely put it in the not fun category until that point, unless you're into that sort of thing.
Right. And we talked about KSP as that sort of thing as well. I don't know if you want to put it on your list or not.
Mostly because, it's kind of a weird in-between scenario where it's not fun if you don't understand the physics or the science behind it, but at the same time, if you do, then you can start having fun with it and doing some wacky shit.
Yeah, so Kerbal walks this fine line, but I think it might fit into that category. I think where it might be more compelling than fun is if you have an interest in that sort of thing, but you don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, you don't understand space isn't just up, but it's fast.
Right. So you're compelled to keep playing to learn. But I suppose if you're in that category, there would be a tipping point where it would become fun and you would keep playing, or you would just get bored.
I mean, this is going to sound like a tenuous connection, but I had sort of the same feeling with Alan Wake, where it's really essentially two games where you have this very lighthearted, kind of goofy daytime scenario. But then at night, it becomes this very dark, dreary, not fun, very sluggish survival shooter.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits in both, both in a compelling category, but also it doesn't, because then you have the sections with Barry or the rock concert, which are definitely fun sections. But at the same time, you went, 6 hours to get there with maybe 3 hours of, fun.
I don't know why I didn't think of a couple of games that just popped into my head. Probably because I find them enjoyable, but pretty much any survival sandbox type
Alan Wake
game
is kind of,
or something like...
Alan Wake is kind of a fill-in for the horror genre for me.
Yeah, something like Factorio as well, or Elite Dangerous. Like those games where there's not a lot of guidance, you're just sort of dumped into it, and you either... But they also kind of fall into that KSP category, though. If you're not interested in that sort of thing, you probably wouldn't stick around, but if you are, you're probably going to have fun with it. Although there's been plenty of times where I've pressed on in, like, Factorio when I wasn't having fun anymore because I wanted to perfect something. I wanted to figure out something, or I was so close to winning that I just wanted to complete it. Sometimes that happens with Elite, too. Like, I'm really close to that next rank or that next thing that I want, and I'd rather stop playing for the night, but I'm right there. The sort of one more turn syndrome for, Civ or whatever.
Yeah, which I didn't put Civ on my list because I find most of it fun. Not the forging alliances part, because, the AI is kind of Civ 5. But definitely what you are talking about, especially with two other games on my list, Euro Truck Sim 2 and Stardew Valley. both have that compelling, just get this done, or just one more day, or just this trip, that sort of thing. Where, on the face of it, I mean, well, Stardew Valley especially. I mean, your wife Katie, she was asking about games she could be interested in. I mentioned Stardew Valley, and what was her response to that?
Oh, she said that was stupid. You guys are dumb. I could see why she would think that, though, because her and I both have worked on real farms, and we both didn't like it. But I like farming games.
Well, you're also, not getting up at the crack of dawn to go fist the cows or whatever a farm does.
Depends on what kind of farm you're on, but I have fisted cows before, so.
Well, we do know that's probably one of your fetishes.
I really don't like it. I know that you're joking. I really don't like it. It's gross. It smells. But whenever you're trying to... Never mind. I don't want to talk about it. And you guys don't want to hear me talk about it.
But speaking of gross things, another one filling in for the roguelite genre would be The Binding of Isaac, and that entire series, and really the entire genre, where moment to moment it's not fun until you get that, depending on the particular game, that one overpowering combination that, you just wipe the floor with everything. Well, at least for a while. Because after all, this is a roguelite, so nothing lasts forever. Yes, that moment is fun, but up until that moment, you're compelled to keep going. It's looking back at Binding of Isaac, it's not fun until those moments. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's also games that... So I've got Please Don't Touch Anything on my list, because I didn't really have fun playing that game. I just was like, oh, that's weird. That's neat. So just sort of curiosity kept me poking around in that for a little while until my curiosity.
It's amazing how well we're synced up because, skipping XCOM because I already talked about it, but King's Quest, the King's Quest series, and really the old school point and click genre, Sierra style point and clicks where everything was out to kill you, and a lot of the interest in the game wasn't just getting through the game and getting through the story and whatever moon logic puzzles are involved, but also how you could die. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes in King's Quest there's that obvious statue that's kind of tracking you. That's this giant archer that's like, it looks like there's an X in that doorway. Probably shouldn't stand on that. But then there's the other moments where a slight misclick and you fall to your death.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, even though it's not on my list. Nier Automata has that. There's something like 30 endings in that game, and most of them are different ways that you can fail the game by dying. And there have been people who have, made whole YouTube series at this point about just all the different ways you can die in Nier Automata. And that's just something that compels them to do, or they're compelled to do. Despite the fact that it's completely unnecessary to beat the game. The last game I have on my list is Headliner, which I talked about a couple months ago as well. And that game wasn't really fun. Most of the gameplay elements are pretty boring, but just the idea of how much of an effect media can have, news media, on people's outlook and the way that things are handled, especially with the current political climate, was just really fascinating. And I was compelled to play through something like 6 times by the time I was done with it, 5 or 6 times, just to see how many different outcomes I could get and how much you really could affect by the spin you put on a story.
Well, one other one I have on the compelling list, and I have a couple more on the field trip list, is World of Warcraft filling in for the MMO genre. Once again, it's one of those games that, for certain people, it's definitely a lot of fun, but at the same time, a lot of the compulsion was, play with your friends, turning it almost into a virtual chat room, or a 3D chat room, I should say. Before VR chat was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, for both World of Warcraft and EVE Online, for me, at points those games were just chores. It's like, all right, got to do my dailies, got to check on my whatevers for whichever game it was.
Yeah, and if you don't do it, you fall behind your friends, and then your raid spot may be gone, or whatever.
Right. And that was not fun. It was work. But I had to keep doing it just like you do a job because you need to in order to, be, like you said, ready for raids or whatever. The most fun that I ever had out of World of Warcraft was playing with Katie when we were dating, and then later playing with my mom once I got her into the game. Although now she's way past
probably
me. Way past me.
My most memorable part of an MMO was actually it was a raid failure. It was actually kind of a goofy thing. Shall I share the story? This wasn't in World of Warcraft. This was in EverQuest. Going way back. Okay, in the Bastion of Thunder, which was one of the mid-tier raids for expansion pack like 5 or 6 out of like 14 or 15 now. One of the last raids, I think it was actually the last raid there, was this kind of usurper thunder god that's trying to take over the plane of thunder. Story, right? Well, the raiding in EverQuest was always iffy as best because it didn't have the proper interface. It was kind of just this hapdash thrown together thing. Like most of EverQuest, to be perfectly honest. Looking back at EverQuest, it's this absolute massive grind. It's kind of masquerading as a pseudo game, more chat room than anything. Anyway, raid starts to wipe, and somehow I'm one of the last ones still alive. Well, I pop my speed boost and I start running because I thought, if you're going to kill me, I'll make you work for it. And then I keep running because it was technically an outdoor zone and I was a shaman, and shaman had the best speed boost outside of a bard. So second best, but best sustained, I should say. And I just kept running. And then the raid started to filter back in. It's like, why is the boss still at under half health? And then I just hear on voice comms, "Don't stop running. We're reforming." And we had, nice. Like I said, we had the boss at under half health, and it was a tough fight to begin with for our group. So I kited the boss for a good 10 minutes while everybody filtered back in through the zone because it was, got knocked all the way out of zone and had to filter back in. Everybody buffed up and we beat them.
Nice.
It was just the goofiest thing. I wish I had a video of it because it took the tank a good solid 2 minutes to draw all the aggro off of me because that guy was pissed. But outside of that, I could only think of a couple times that I really could say I could had fun with EverQuest. Everything else was either just, pop in and play the games, chat with people while grinding, or, do my chores, essentially. It was a compulsion. The Skinner box, really.
Right.
And, that's kind of the MMO genre in a nutshell, really. Shining moments of outside of mediocrity. Yeah.
There have been more recent MMOs that try to go the other way by having a lot more story-focused content. Like Star Wars The Old Republic. Mm-hmm. There is in-game content and stuff like that, but most of the game can be played as a single-player story experience just with MMO trappings.
Yeah, which kind of kills the pacing of the game, doesn't it? Or the story, I should say.
It does. Although I do like a good just MMO. I used to play those more though for just like time sinks while I listen to podcasts or audio.
Well, that's turned into Euro Truck for me.
I play it. Yeah, for me right now that's Elite, but I always have Elite of those games.
But a couple other field trip games and we're done here.
Yeah, I've knocked off my whole list, so unless something pops into my head, I'm
the
done.
Visual novel genre, just in general, but I have as representatives of it. This is The Police, which is sort of visual novel with some management thrown in, and If My Heart Had Wings. Another game club game. Very story focused, usually, unless you're playing one of Jared's, not goofy, schlocky, tits everywhere, but more serious, visual novels, even though they can have tits, and often do, actually. they're not fun to play with at a moment to moment. They're a story. They're a novel, and there can't be all highs in a novel. Otherwise, it gets rather boring after a while.
I mean, I think even my schlocky visual novels would fit into that category because they're not necessarily fun to play. It's just like, haha, this is a silly story. Although I guess but you can enjoy the story too in a non-schlocky one. So, but still, yeah, I think pretty much all visual novels fit into that
in some way or another. Some far more than others. I mean, I would say probably the best example would be something like Clannad, but I haven't played it, so I don't want to throw it in. Yeah. But then my last one is Valiant Hearts: The Great War, which has its moments, particularly some of the boss fights, which are set to classical music. But it is just a depressing, heartfelt story that, is very not fun, particularly the ending, which I don't really want to spoil. But, just a really heavy games like that in general. Well, Brothers of Tale Two Sons would fall into that as well. Just telling these heart-wrenching stories, not fun. It can have its fun moments. In Brothers of Tale Two Sons, dancing with the inventor, that sort of thing. But then you have Spider Lady,
right? Spider Lady.
But that's my list. Ended up coming with a few others, but more just categories in general.
Yeah. So, did we actually technically answer the question of the best games that aren't fun?
Technically, no, because it's really comes down to personal preference. Because, we mentioned Kerbal because, if you don't have the science knowledge behind it, it wouldn't be fun. But at the same time, it would be compelling and be one of the better games. XCOM could be another example. You don't have the strategic knowledge or knowing how the game mechanics work, but at the same time, it could still be compelling and be the best game. The best game is kind of a misnomer, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, that's true. There's very few things that you could just go, yep, that's objectively the best thing, especially when it comes to entertainment and art.
I mean, hell, people could absolutely hate city management games, but I could think, SimCity's definitely the best. Well, okay, definitely not 2013 installment, but still. So I don't think there's really a best game. There's definitely ones that stand out, particularly the first two that we think of immediately, Papers, Please and This War of Mine, and, lesser ones like To the Moon or the Brothers of Tale Two Sons. But even then, they don't have to be dark, depressing, heartfelt stories. They can be, just compelling games like Euro Truck, where you're just sitting there driving along listening to podcasts. Is it fun? No, most likely not. Is it compelling? Well, yeah. Is it the best game? Well, it depends on what you call best.
Hear.
What?
Yeah, so that was that. A good discussion nonetheless, even if it didn't technically answer the question.
We'll just put Kyle on it.
Yeah. So now we're going to move it on to our community corner, where we have a few tweets this week and then 2 audio letters. One of them particularly lengthy, but that's all right. I'd rather have lengthy community engagement as opposed to no community. We're going to start off with Kyle's audio letter. And without further ado, I'll just let Kyle tell you about what's going on.
Greetings, J. Arthur and Caffeine Rage. This is Kyle coming at you this week about PUBG. So some of the members of the community and I have been playing a lot of PlayerUnknown's, and for those who don't know what that is a game in which you and 100 other people are dropped onto what I will colloquially call Murder Island. The idea is to be the last man standing in a scrounge-em-up survival sort of battle royale. The game proper starts with you and your 99 competitors in an area. You need to choose when and where to drop in order to maximize the amount of loot and minimize the amount of danger that you're going to encounter. Through the course of running around on the island and scavenging various weapons, armors, and health pickups from the various structures that dot the landscape, you need to continually make your way into a safe zone, which is continually shrinking. If you find yourself outside of the safe zone, you will start to take damage. It's not a whole lot in the first couple of collapses of the zone, but as the game picks up intensity, the longer you stay outside of the safe zone, the more likely it is you're going to die within a few seconds. Now, that very gamey aspect of the experience is definitely a good idea. It prevents people from just turtling up in a random shack somewhere and forces confrontation in the end. You need to be the last person standing in order to get that sweet, sweet chicken dinner. So why am I talking about PUBG? Well, partially because Cube, Ghost, Mel's, and I have been playing it, we've been having a really good time with it, but also because I wanted to answer a pretty stupid question that nobody was asking. The question was, if you took 100 random average Americans, who would survive, how good are your odds of survival, and what actually goes into surviving PUBG? In order to do this properly, I had to set up a few ground rules and assumptions. The first is that people are being dropped in as is with no additional training. This prevents the question from becoming irrelevant at the first hurdle. Second, in the game, the parachutes will open at a preset altitude from the ground, and I'm going to assume that the same is true in real life for our scenario. That way, a lack of parajumping skills is not necessarily going to handicap this at the first hurdle. That having been said, let's get started. How many potential participants do we have for this? Well, at time of recording, the current US population is 325 million people. Awesome. So your chances of getting selected for this are something in the neighborhood of 0.003%. I like those odds. But what skills do you possibly have that could give you the edge in this game? So, what would give you an edge in these games? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is a proficiency with firearms. Most of the kills in this game are performed with firearms simply because, well, they're everywhere in this game. So, that seems like a pretty straightforward question. We just need to know the number of people in the United States who own a gun. How hard could that be to answer? Weirdly enough, this was the number that I had to speculate the most on. See, for whatever reason, we don't have an accurate number of how many people own guns in the United States, but we do have fairly accurate numbers of how many guns there are in the United States. The estimate ranges from between 270 million to 310 million. Now, this is where I had to start data mining my friends in order to try to figure out how many guns the average gun owner owned. So after talking to a lot of my gun-owning friends and crunching the numbers, I came up with 3.3 guns is how many guns the average gun owner has. This takes into account people who own a lot and also people who only own one. So that's pretty easy. We take 290 million and divide it by 3.3, and that gives us somewhere in the neighborhood of 88 million gun owners in the United States. But that only takes into account proficiency with civilian firearms, so while you're still going to run into problems down the road, you're going to have a basic understanding of what ammo goes into what gun, you're going to know how to reload a magazine, and you're going to have a technical knowledge of how zeroing distance and optics work. In addition to that, being familiar with firearms conveys better aim. The average among my gun-owning friends and myself is about an 81% accuracy with pistols, and about a 90% accuracy with basic rifles. Alright, that's a good start, but what if you had more skills? What if you are one of the active duty or reserve duty military personnel in this country? At time of recording, there's 2.2 million active and reserve duty military personnel. What kind of skills would they have that the average civilian probably wouldn't? The first and most important would be proficiency with fully automatic rifles. There's a thing called keyholing, or bullet clustering. The idea is when you fire an automatic rifle, it's going to come up and off the target due to recoil. How quickly you can get back onto target and keeping your clustering smaller, or your keyhole smaller, is a just ridiculously hard skill that takes a lot of training to get good at. The other key advantage that military personnel have is exposure to combat stress and ways of dealing. Combat stress is going to be probably one of the biggest killers in this what-if scenario when people are just so stressed out that they start making really stupid choices. Weirdly enough, this doesn't seem to confer over into firearm accuracy. Most of the military people I talked to had about an 80% accuracy with a pistol and about a 90% accuracy with a rifle. So it seems a hobby level of firearms experience is enough to get the accuracy up to where it needs to be. So, that having been said, let's break down the population into some averages. Roughly, 72% of the United States population has what I would call below average firearm experience. So they are our baseline, and they will be assigned 1 point of weight in this simulation. What you can expect from people at this proficiency level will be not knowing what kind of ammo goes with what guns, not knowing how to load a magazine, not being aware of zeroing distances or optics and how to sight them in, not being able to deal with combat stress, and when going full auto, having no way to compensate for keyholing, which is why they are given the lowest weight in this particular scenario. The second group of participants, making up about 27% of the US population, is being given weight 5. They're being given weight 5 because of the several advantages that they hold over the people, such as the ability to fire a gun with some degree of accuracy, the ability to match guns and ammo types, the ability to reload magazines, and at least a technical understanding of zeroing distances and how to sight in optics. The final group of participants, made up of active and reserve duty military, are being given weight 25. This is because they have firearms experience and generally combat experience. Now, I know this isn't true across the board, but I'm sure that it helps having been in stressful situations before. So, how does this shake out in a survival way in a PUBG scenario? Having run the numbers, I've come up with 2 percentages of who will win this thing overall. The first that I'd like to talk about is the individual percentage. That is, in each group, how good are the individual's odds of winning this particular challenge? Let's start off with the professionals, the reserve and active duty military. They make up about 1 of the 100 people on the battlefield, and they have an individual chance of about 11% of winning this thing. The second group, the hobbyists, of whom there are about 27 on the battlefield, are next in line at 2% per individual for victory in this competition. The final group, the final 72 people on the battlefield, who have no firearms experience, have about a 0.4% chance of individual victory. So that's it, isn't it? The person with 11% clearly has the advantage here. They're probably going to win, right? Well, that would be discounting a lot of factors, such as the other players and the constantly shrinking zone of play. Weirdly enough, when taken a look at as a group, given the population and weight, the hobbyists actually have the highest percent chance of having a hobbyist win this thing overall, at 58%. The next most likely group to win is actually the people who've never fired a gun in their lives, at 31% likelihood that the winner will be from that group. The reason mostly comes down to the fact that there's 72 of these people running around, and that kind of swings the odds a bit more in their favor. Now, the last group, the active and reserve duty military, still are sitting at an 11% chance of winning this thing overall. This is simply because they are only one person, and it's pretty likely that they'll get taken out at some point in this game. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the professionals, the active and reserve military, have the highest individual percent chance of winning this thing, but more likely than not, it's going to be a hobbyist that's going to take home that sweet, sweet chicken dinner, even if, as a hobbyist, your percent chance of winning overall is only 2% individual. So I guess what my advice would be is avoid the people who are shooting at you and only kill out of necessity. This strategy not only seems to work really, really well in my everyday life, but it also works pretty good in PUBG. Anyways, so that's about how the average American would fare in PUBG. Was there any point to this? Well, no, not really, and as I was discussing with Cube when playing PUBG, what the hell is the point of PUBG? And I obviously don't mean from like a video game perspective, but my question to him was, what is PUBG in its own universe? Why are people dropping onto this island to become best murder hobo? To be completely honest, neither of us could answer things, and as Sigmund Freud once said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. I think this is just kind of an interesting game mode that PlayerUnknown has been able to make into a very decent standalone. Anywho, this has been Kyle. Thanks for listening, and I hope you all have a great night.
All right. Thank you very much, Kyle, for telling us all about PUBG.
Do you have a feeling that we're going to wake up someday, gagged and sitting on an airplane?
I mean, I do all right. I'm in that hobbyist level that he talked about.
Well, I'm in the cripple level, so I would be dead instantly.
0% chance.
Yeah, but well, Kyle, first of all, what the hell are you on? What are you going to give everyone to simulate the clunkiness of PUBG? Are you going to give people personal teleporters to simulate the rubber banding? I mean, you're not quite at PUBG yet. You're at a very interesting reality show, but not quite PUBG.
I would love to watch that reality show. Although I want you to further tweak your analysis with other potentially useful skills for PUBG, besides just firearms
I mean,
familiarity.
hell, just traps.
Because if this was the real world, then you would have to deal with endurance. PUBG matches don't last that long, so you don't have to worry about like food and stuff like that. But
At least with that
physical
attitude.
endurance, does your gender affect your probability of winning? That sort of thing. You've got a good start here, Kyle. This is a good start, but I'm gonna need like 10 more pages for you to complete this research essay.
And are you going to resurrect Richard Dawkins and have the Running Man, or are we going just pure Battle Royale?
Is this Hunger Games or Running Man?
Yeah, personally, I would go with Running Man. I think that would be a hell of a game mode, actually. We haven't really seen a proper asymmetric thing like that. We've seen it close with Evolve, but Evolve turned into hide and seek and not a lot of anything else. Running Man, if you could set it up where you're actively hunting the entire time instead of just chasing maybe a signal off in the distance.
Yeah,
I think Evolve, if it was done a lot better, it could have been a lot more interesting.
Isn't that the case for most things that were bad? If they'd just done a better job, it would have been more interesting.
Well, except for Lawbreakers.
Yeah. By the way, Kyle, I have missed your little, I don't know what you would call these, your little essays, I suppose. They're so much fun. I love being surprised by what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the hell.
This was a good one. So, anything else that you have to say or add? Or
never stop
whatever?
being Kyle.
Amen. I want to know if you and Ghost Shark like talked about this beforehand, because there's a lot of not similarity. They go together. Your two audio letters go based on what Ghost Shark about.
Speak of which,
hey guys, it's Ghost Shark here, and I am talking to you from my vehicle in the middle of a parking lot by my school in the freezing cold, and hopefully this won't take too terribly long. You guys were talking about some interesting stuff last week, and I thought I would chime in on it. Those of you who don't know about my history, I tend not to talk about it too much because I don't want to sound like I'm bragging about it all that much. I have about 14 years worth of military experience under my belt. I joined in 2001 before 9/11 happened. Done 4 years active time and a whole lot more reserve time with a couple deployments under my belt altogether, and a lot of training time. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I've also gone through a police academy, and at one point I was looking at being a police officer as my career of choice. Certain things happened in life, and I just never got around to it. And now I think I'm a bit too old and falling apart to really pursue that career anymore. Civilian side, I've worked at a gun shop for about 5 years. I quit that job about a year and a half ago, and I still shoot on occasion, not nearly as much as I used to, but I think that kind of gives me a little bit of a insight to, a lot of these active shooter stuff. With all of my training that I've got, I feel like I have some things to say. Number one is that training is key for any of this stuff, whether it's military, whether it's law enforcement, civilian side, doing concealed carry. The more training you have, the better equipped you will be for whatever might come your way. Civilians, in the gun shop, I've seen plenty of people that needed way more training than they actually had, and I was afraid of what they would do. Would they ever need to use their firearm? There's some people that really shouldn't have firearms, in my opinion. Not to say that there shouldn't be a Second Amendment, but that's the whole political thing that I don't really want to get into right now. But the more training that I've seen, usually the more training I see people get, the more comfortable they feel with whatever they're doing. Case in point, there is a woman that came into the shop. Let's call her Tanya. She was absolutely paranoid. Her car had gotten broken into in her house at least 3 times in 1 month. Unfortunately, in Illinois, or fortunately, depending on the situation, in Illinois, you have to have a firearms owner's identification card in order to buy guns and ammo. She didn't have one of these at the time, so she had to apply for it, wait the 6 weeks in fear of her life, or, bodily harm, I should say, while the card came in, before she could do anything. The day she got it, she came in, bought a firearm, signed up for a class, took the firearm out in a range, fired 2 rounds, and almost called it quits right there. With a little bit of help and assistance from some of the people that were working that day, we managed to get her calmed down, get her to come back on one of the off hours when there was only maybe one other person shooting on a range, and calmed her down, got her comfortable, got her class, get her training done, got her to practice a lot more, and it's really hard to describe, just how shocked and timid she was coming in with her mindset of, being in abject terror of her, with what was going on with her. But just from working with her, getting to know her, getting her trained so she's more comfortable with the weapon that she's going to carry to protect herself, if anything was to happen, she absolutely came out of her shell, and she was an amazing person. I've got dozens of stories I could tell like that, where people something happened to them and they were absolutely afraid, and they're, through finding a way to, protect themselves and become more confident in what they did, what they had to protect themselves with. They weren't running around trying to be some gun-toting vigilante. They just wanted some peace of mind. But it all came down to training. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with, in a roundabout way, thanks to the cold. A lot of things, whether it's concealed carry or law enforcement, they don't really focus on the training of putting somebody in a high-stress situation and, seeing how they react, seeing what they do. There's a thing called the OODA loop, OODA. It's observe, orient, direct. No, I'm sorry. The cold's killing me here. Observe, orient, decide, and act. By doing those 4 actions, whenever a threat happens, it's basically your body's natural problem solving. The problem is, when you throw stress into this mix, the human mind can sometimes skip a step and just constantly get stuck in a loop. As in, say, you don't go back to the beginning after you've completed an action. And instead of stopping and looking to see what's going on around you, you just keep doing what you're doing, because your brain just says, keep acting. A case of this is all of the police shootings you hear of where, dozens of rounds are fired, not many hits are happening, but, people I've heard of a situation where a police officer emptied his magazine 3 times before he realized that he was done shooting. The guy who was shooting back at him was on the ground bleeding out before he realized that, okay, I've just burned all of my ammo. But that was basically because he was put in a high-stress situation where he hadn't really been in before, and his body or his mind just didn't finish the loops and, come back around for him to look and see what was going on, and decide that, okay, threat is done, I need to stop shooting. I'm not defending gratuitous violence in situations like that. I'm not saying he was in the right or the wrong. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm saying is, the more times that, the more stress, the more, God, it's cold in here. the more training you have when you're put under stressful conditions, the more apt you are to keep that loop from getting stuck in a crazy cycle. So, and like I said, law enforcement's the same way. Law enforcement, from what I've seen, there really isn't that much in the way of extra training when it comes to marksmanship or crazy things like that. I know of several police officers when I was working at the gun shop who would come in once a year, a week before qualifications, fire 50 rounds at the target, be glad that they actually hit the target, and then leave, and I wouldn't see them for another 11 months until next qualifications happened. So, well, there's that. As far as training and, like this application for, teachers, or even for the military, or for law enforcement and stuff like that, these games, so to speak, that's been going on for a while. America's Army isn't really one of those. Like Rage said last week, it was more of a recruiting tool. But there are some odds and end simulators or things like that that are used to provide a training environment. It's easier to run a program or a game like that where you can kind of try out different tactics than to set up a whole big real-world kill house or shoot house, or set up some kind of a live-action scenario. Not to say that those don't happen, and that's kind of a way to supplement training. But there are other ways to do virtual training, as in like I know I've spent some time on firearm simulators where you're running modified firearms with lasers on them, and it's essentially like the old Nintendo Zapper, only with real firearms, modified. But they'll throw scenarios at you where everything's a live-action video, and depending on what happens in a situation, you may have to just shout at the screen, draw your weapon, just drawing the weapon to kind of calm the threat down, to de-escalate. That's not de-escalating. Anyway, it's basically a shoot or no shoot kind of situation. There's a controller behind you where he gets to push buttons to say whether things go crazy or whether things de-escalate thanks to how you are reacting. So, the most advanced thing I've seen along those lines was a few years ago. I was at a expo for military and law enforcement tools and gadgets, up and coming stuff. And there was a space that was taped off about 50 by 50 foot, and there was a fire team of Marines that were in it with all kinds of high-tech gear decked out on them. And what they were doing was, it was a virtual shoot house. That whole space was completely empty, but they were wearing virtual headsets and sensors all over, and they were inside of a virtual world with doors and walls and windows and simulated bad guys all over the place. So, and I'm starting to shake because it's freezing in here. Alright, let me go ahead and start wrapping this up because it's been a while already. So I'd mentioned America's Army 3, and honestly, since it is a free game, I would be kind of interested in if more of the community got into it, just to try it out. I have it, I play around with it every once in a while. I don't really mess around with the multiplayer because it is a pretty small community, and I would get my butt kicked pretty handily because there's a lot of dedicated people in it. But, that being said, if we all got together and just had some fun, it would be interesting. America's Army 3 is, I'm sorry, not America's Army. Arma 3 is another game that's very interesting on that. It plays the large scale of combat very well. The small scale is not the best. Well, I won't say it's not the best. It just has some very interesting quirks. The armor bugs. But I wouldn't mind getting more into that. Anyway, God, my hand is frozen right now. Alright, I'll start wrapping this up. Let's see, what else did I have on my notes here? Oh, Bungie. So I've never played Destiny or Destiny 2. I'm a fandroid of Bungie from back in the old days. I know you guys were talking about it. I absolutely love the Marathon series. And if I can ever find those open source again, I know they're on the internet somewhere, that might be something I end up streaming or recording sometime in the future. So, and speaking of streaming, since this is going to actually come out before I'm planning to do this, I'll go ahead and mention it on here. I'm thinking about streaming on Saturday. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to stream. It's basically just kind of testing out Microsoft Mixer to see whether or not it's going to work on my computer. Because if I do stream The Wolf Among Us, like I'm wanting to, that's probably what it's going to be on, rather than Twitch, since Mixer tends to have, I think they have like a 1 second delay. So that might actually be beneficial to get some quicker activity between me and my streamers or my watchers. So, anyways, I'm about to shake my phone out of my hands. So, if I can get a stream going, I'll give it a try. I might try just testing out Wolf Among Us or some other story game like that. Otherwise, if enough people show up that have Arma, I've been kind of thinking about maybe trying out how well it works with real-world tactics. I know there's a little shoot house in there that I've been messing around with, and if enough people from the community want to get into it, I'd be willing to show, like, some out tactics or other things like that. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, before I turn into a popsicle, I'm going to end this, and I am going to turn on the engine and blast the heat for a little bit. So, alright, I will talk to you guys later.
Thank you very much, Ghost Shark, for that interesting, informative perspective on a very difficult issue, and also for opening up and sharing your life.
Yeah, and during
you've talked...
Frostbite, we hope that you're still able to count to 20 without having to get naked.
I don't hope that. I want you to get naked.
What, you want him to lose a finger?
I mean, I want him to get naked. If that's how we have to do it, then sure.
Yeah, but just think of the shrinkage if he was sitting there shivering the entire time.
That's okay. That's
you just
fine.
want to warm him up.
Exactly. But no, it's just really interesting to listen to a former military man just talk about a lot of that stuff. We weren't
disparaging the fact that the tool exists. It's more of a sad state of how the country handles firearms.
Yeah. I have a few family members who were in the military at one point or another in their life, but most of them served in quite a bit of active duty combat, either in Vietnam or the Gulf War, and they don't like to talk about any of their stuff at all. So even though I've been exposed to military people, police officers, I've got several police officers in my family as well. One of my cousins is actually, he was on a SWAT team for 20 years or something like that. He's a police captain now. He's older than me, obviously. He's 50-something, but, you know, family relations can be odd sometimes with how you line up. I think he's my second cousin. But anyways, that's
so you
that's
can fuck him?
Point. Yeah, something like that. But you know, he doesn't like to talk about it either, just because of the experiences that he's had.
Yeah, the stress.
So, yeah. I mean, I've talked about this before, but I mean, I grew up around firearms. I've been handling a gun since I was 5 or 6 years old. And, you know, I've said it before on here. I have a concealed carry license. We own several firearms here at our house, and I haven't been to the range as much this year as I would have liked to have, but I still go practice regularly. I've taken a couple of advanced courses. I've never done combat training or anything like that. I've never taken any of the like super advanced courses where they'll run you through that sort of thing. Because as civilians, if you're willing to pay, then if you meet their sort of experience standards, at least for the ones that are around here, you have to basically pass a test that says that you're comfortable enough with a firearm to participate in this advanced hands-on training. But I mean, you can get some level of that training. So it's just interesting though to hear the perspective of someone who is both former military and also worked in a gun store talk about this kind of stuff. Because I've also seen instances of what you're talking about, the particular lady who came in and was scared and super nervous, and that transformation that happens. Like, I've seen that in people. It's interesting. It's also a bit foreign to me as well, because being raised around firearms, I've actually been in situations where instructors or people who are working in gun shops and things like that are not observing proper handling of firearms. And it's like, whoa, what are you doing? You're supposed to be teaching a class. Why are you pointing a gun at people? I don't care if it's unloaded. Like, that's one of the rules.
I'm sorry, but
that's like rule number 1. Don't point a gun at somebody, regardless of whether or not it's loaded.
I'm just thinking of
because what if you're wrong?
I just keep thinking of this one kind of viral video that went around a couple of years ago of a firearm safety officer, and it was in Florida, of course, who shot himself in the foot.
Florida man.
During class.
I've seen that one, and there's a bunch of these. There's one where a guy winds up accidentally discharging his firearm, and it kicks back and hits him in the face. One of the students in the class were like, "Was that supposed to happen?" And he's like, yeah, it was. I was
but this guy went full Barney Fife.
Yeah. I don't know how much to really add or say on top of that. I mean, those sort of personal life stories are difficult to talk about in this sort of format.
But we do appreciate you bearing the cold for us.
Indeed. So I'll edit most of that out, but there's a couple places where I'm not sure I can get out without cutting out some of the other dialogue where you're saying you're in the cold. Yeah, that buzz is pretty consistent, so I think I can deal with it. I don't know. If it was buzzy, then you know. But if it wasn't, there was a horrible buzzy noise.
I think it was his phone vibrating. Yeah, some sort of alert. It was trying to warm itself. It was too cold.
Yeah. Ghost Shark did apologize, though, and I accept your apology. It's fine.
I've
had some pretty shitty audio issues.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I was expecting, honestly, after you said, mind your ears.
Well, I had my volume turned up too loud to start with, and so it was way too loud for me. As to some of the other things that you talked about, I also enjoy Marathon. I played Marathon before I played Doom, so I prefer Marathon overall. I used to have the open source games on a flash drive, but I have no idea where it is, if I even still have it. But if I find them, I'll send them to you on Dropbox. The files aren't very big. I might do a search on the interwebs for them a little bit later. And then for streaming, what night did he say he was going to stream?
Didn't catch it.
Did he say?
I'm sorry, I just didn't catch it. If he said it, I just missed it. The audio quality was not that great.
Okay. Supposed to tweet about it. If it was for Thursday night, we could all pile on watching Ghost Shark stream. Because Thursday night was when I was planning on doing my makeup community. But if he's going to do it then we'll just all go hang out with Ghost Shark instead. But I'll talk to him about that and figure it out and post a tweet. Although by the time this comes out, if it was going to be Thursday, it'll be too late.
Unless you have a time machine.
So fuck it.
We'll do it live?
Yeah, we'll do it live. We'll fix it in post. Do it live and fix it in post.
Isn't that two different things?
Shh. Don't worry about it.
Too late worrying about it.
Alrighty. Was there anything else that he said that I missed before we move on to the tweets?
No. I don't think so. I mean, he did mention Bungie, but mostly just being an old fan of it with the Marathon games, and that's really all I caught. So, yeah, tweets.
Cool.
Jim sent us a link about how when money affects gameplay, companies optimize for revenue instead of player fun, but we already kind of talked about that before, so it's more just reaffirming what we've already talked about quite a bit. So, moving along, Chemist brought up the Civ 6 plus 2 DLCs for $12 with the humble monthly bundle. And I am so sorry. So I guess he's killing people's free time. And then there was a rather long thread about Kyle backstabbing people and Civ running on low-spec hardware between Kyle, Andrew Mason, and Chemist. I hope you could forgive me skipping on that. It was like 20 or so long. Let's see. Ghost Shark. I served in the 90s. Just how old do you think I am, sir?
Yeah. I misremembered.
And I just didn't hear you say the 90s, so, Let's see. Kyle. I think giving Ghost Shark booze is the only part of the bad / impulse buy equation. Usually there needs to be some cheering them on. Preferably, that person should also be drunk. And finally, we wrap up with a small back and forth with Chemist. Did Kyle just go through, I'm considering moving to a place with lesser nuclear fallout contamination chance to, let's build a nuclear power plant in my garden. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, I guess. Plus, aren't fusion reactors not illegal because they don't exist? Well, see, here's the thing, is that you would have a Kerbal inside maintaining the nuclear reaction. They work as a living control rod, so you're perfectly fine. I mean, Groove would be all globe. Yeah. But anyway, Kyle, they exist, but as I said, they always take more energy to keep them going than they produce with our current tech. Chemists, that plane flies, it's just lower and it's higher. Kyle, exactly. We are getting there as a species, though. So before long, Kyle's going to be exhibiting extra pair of robotic arms, I guess, from developing his fusion reactor, or going full Spider-Man 2.
Yes. And
they'll all be murders, all 5 of them, because all the arms have their own AI. Because why not? That doesn't make much sense in Spider-Man, does it? Why did the robot arms all need their own AIs?
I don't know.
But anyway, that is that done. So we're skipping Discovery Queue this week because we are at the 3-hour 20-minute mark without audio letters, which means we're at the part of the podcast where you go first.
Indeed, we are. So, if you want to find my YouTube channel where all my stuffs are, you can do so by searching for Gaming Psychologist. Coming back soon is Divinity, because we actually recorded some of that.
I still want to give it a couple weeks to build up the last episodes, if you don't mind.
Yes, indeed. That's fine. Still coming out on a daily to every other day basis are the Kerbalcast episodes that I've been putting up. Surprisingly popular. Lots of people showing up like, oh my gosh, are they back? Oh no. Oh, you're J. Arthur. Cool. Let me send you a message or whatever. And many people have asked what happened to Kerbalcast, and sadly I have to give them all the same answer. We don't know. We speculate just as much as
went into witness protection. I hope you're at least sending them to VGL.
Yep, I've made reference to VGL. So hopefully we pick up some new listeners that way. Other than that, right now it's just the podcast. Again, I have many things that I want to work on and going from project to project. I now want to do something related to visual novels. I'm not sure what. Some sort of video essay. Not like a Let's Play or anything like that. And I just threw that one on the pile. So, nope. Yeah, as always, I make no promises aside from the fact that Divinity will be back soon. And I guess a couple of weeks we feel comfortable to start putting it out.
I just don't know if we're going to get another weekend of recording. So, want to at least get a couple more into the tin before we start releasing.
Yeah, hopefully. I've enjoyed Divinity, but I'm ready for it to end so we can do something else. But I don't want to just stop playing it because I actually want to finish it because I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of that weird compulsion, huh? And yeah, we are in the last quarter or last third of the game. It's just that home stretch.
Yeah.
And also need to really sit down and finalize what we want to do. Our previous plan or figure out something else. I think it's going to be meeting time before too long.
Yay, another business meeting. But other than YouTube, if you want to find me over on Twitter, you can do so by following me at JMA4707, where I tweet about all kinds of things. Today I tweeted about some VGL stats for the year of 2017.
Yeah, and I retweeted them. You really should have done that on the official Twitter as well.
Yeah, I thought about that after the fact, but then I also thought, Rage will find it and retweet it. He always does.
You're lucky I did, because I almost missed it.
So, the short rundown is that in the year of 2017, the year of our Lord 2017, we roughly doubled our listener base and grew our international audience by, or we tripled our international audience. They used to make up about 4 or 5% of our listener base, and now they make up 15% listener base. So, hooray for globalism!
Woo.
And also, thanks to everyone who continues to listen to our podcast and who I assume, shares it with other people.
And tolerates all our funny mouth noises.
And greetings to the newer listeners. Welcome. And if you're somehow listening to this episode for the first time, like this is your first episode. We're sorry. Hello, a special greeting to you. I'm not sorry.
Well, we know you have no shame.
No, I have no shame. You'll learn that soon enough if you haven't figured it out
I think
already.
they figured it out from the 2 visual novels.
Finally, if you want to watch me stream games over on Twitch, you can do so at twitch.tv/jr3707. I was saying Monday nights, but I'm thinking actually I'm going to go for Thursday nights on the regular, just because it would be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday where we would be actively doing things. And I'm a super introvert, so I need a little bit of time between to recharge.
Well, you need your t-shirt first.
I do. I need to buy that t-shirt.
I thought it was funny.
I'm definitely going to buy one. I just haven't yet. But yes, Twitch streams on Thursday, except maybe this Thursday if Ghost is going to stream on Thursday. I got to talk to him about that, but this podcast comes out on Friday, so that doesn't matter.
Unless you have a time machine. If you do, lottery numbers.
Also, 2016 presidential election.
And Bitcoin.
Yeah. Although Bitcoin is going down in value.
Yeah, but see, we hit the peak, so we know when to sell now. If we have a time machine, we could exploit that. Unless that's all the time travelers already.
Finally, if you want to be friends with me on Steam, my Steam username is jarthur4707. I accept all friend requests and love to have nice, wonderful conversations with all our lovely, lovely podcast listeners. So far, everyone has been lovely. No one has been a dickhead or a jackass.
And let's see. The password for this week, if you wish to let them know exactly what episode of the podcast you're coming from, it's Mohawk. Just one of my random words I have listed here.
Nice. Makes me think of the old WoW ad on TV. Mr. T's Night Elf Mohawk. Mr. T, that's not a class.
It is now, fool.
Shut up, fool.
But yeah, on my channel, since it's my turn now, I ended up missing Monday with Civ 5 because after we recorded Divinity, I went immediately into recording Civ, and I did 3 hours and I had no usable footage. I just kept getting shitty map after shitty map after shitty map. And the thing is that there's no way to really tell how shitty your starting situation is until you played for 30 or so minutes and expanded out and looked around. Yeah, let's put it this way. I'm trying to play the Incas, which requires a certain map type to do well. Wasn't getting that. In one attempt, I was surrounded by 5 barbarian encampments, and they were all gunning for me. So you could imagine that was kind of dipped an expansion in the bud. Because, I could handle 2 or 3, but 5? No. I was constantly having to deal with barbarians, so, decided, this is probably a loss. Or, I'd be a non-contender. So decided to skip that. One, I had 5 copies of the same luxury resource, so I was going to have a happiness issue unless I tried to trade. And, early trading is very tough with the AI, especially when you haven't encountered them yet. So I ended up skipping that one. So, I'm going to try it again tomorrow night and see if I actually get something that's worth recording. Or worth saving, I should say. And you can find that over at Gaming with Caffeine Rage. RimWorld is planned to come back next week. Need to do final testing on a couple of things and just to give a little bit more time with it. But I should be good to go with that. Divinity will probably be 2 or so weeks out from that. Or from now to, give some extra recording time to myself and Jared. Sunday Sampler may have a delay this week because I have something that looks interesting, but I have an embargo, and I don't want to break the gentleman's agreement because that's a trick you only really pull once, to be perfectly honest.
A gentleman's agreement.
I mean, that's what it is, really. An embargo is a gentleman's agreement. There's really no legal stance holding me to it. But if you start breaking embargoes, people are going to be less likely to give you free games. And I like free games.
Me too.
especially when they're good, right? Or they have boobies.
Or both.
I'll go with that. Yeah, I'll take your word for that last one. But yeah, Sunday Sampler should be an interesting one this week, provided I get time with that. And you can find all that over with Gaming with Caffeine Rage, or you can just see me tweet somewhat randomly about who knows what on Gaming with CR. And, well, if you wish to contact us directly for the podcast, you could do so, vglpodcast@gmail.com, with your letters, voicemails, gaming-related topics, or just tweet us, VGL Podcast, on the Twitter. And if you step to pay for this absolute madness, like, well, Cube did, and he got his 2 topics, you can do so, patreon.com/VGL Podcast. We're probably not going to do 2 topics again, unless we have a massive breakdown in communications again. But, I think we had some interesting discussions because of it.
Yeah, definitely.
If you wish to see the show notes with the absolute monster list of games that we have this week, which I am not looking forward to putting together, you can do so, vglpodcast.podbean.com, and there is also home to the RSS feed. If you're catching this on YouTube, or if you want a non-RSS version, you could use iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or whatever. Yeah, wherever Jared's shoved this podcast. Yes, including there. And no, not there. That's not legal in his state. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod. You can find his work at incompetech.com. And
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice. Bye-bye now.
2018 actually looks pretty good for gaming.